Hello, everyone, and welcome to day two coverage of the Cosmic Crown Showdown, where players are competing for a prize pool worth $5,000 in the first place walk away with $2,000 in those Cosmic Crown animated sleeves. Let's go and get started. Introduce ourselves. My name is Adam Takata, but you can call me Snake, and I am joined by my fellow caster, Patrick Sarmiento, aka Hacky. Hacky, how you doing today?
Doing well. We've got the day two of the CCS. We got a slight delay to technical issues and making sure the players can get in, but that gives us some time to prep, relax, and we're going to get these sweet games for you.
Indeed. So let's do a little bit of a recap from yesterday. As a reminder, the Cosmic Crown Showdown is an invite only tournament for the top 64 players of both the limited and constructed ladders. And we had actually a couple extra people here, but these players here competing for a chance to make the top eight into day number two. And as of yesterday, at the end of the tournament, we had our top eight. So let's go ahead and take a look at that list. Coming in undefeated at 7 wins, Raposa playing Tiktakcha, Stunt Bum, Give Up the Geist, Joe Zimmer, Ruakthar, and Enema at 6 wins, and Etruria and Esotericist rounding out your top 8 players from day one. Interesting here as we look at the champions. Raposa with Tiktakcha. There was only one other player who were doing it, and they were playing two different shard combinations. Also, we had Takahiro. Takahiro hasn't made the top 8 since November of last year. So good to see Takahiro here with Blood Diamond. Couple Casa Golden Light decks. Diamond, these Candlekin decks doing strong. Lady Avalanche still in the mix. Blackberry Knight and Rhiannon of Flame. Also of note, these players who qualified, 4 of them were qualified constructed and 4 of them qualified limited. I know yesterday I said it was tilted on the limited side, but just doing some double checking on our stats, it is even 4 limited and 4 constructed. Hacky, what are your thoughts about our top 8 from yesterday?
Variety of decks here. We have 6 different champions and basically 7 different deck archetypes. A lot of decks came into this Cosmic Crown Showdown in the constructed rounds, and um, honestly, anybody's game. Raposa doing really well, going 7-0, and everyone else fighting. We've got a lot of different decks. We were entertained. It, it could be anyone's game. It makes sense to me that limited players and constructed players are similar in skill. Picking a constructed deck, piloting it to victory, to see somebody have an edge in today's draft.
And just a note, because of the issues in the tournament starting late, there was an issue with that. One of the players was not able to make it today. That was Esotericist. So we're going to have a lineup change here, and that means Eaglov will be coming in at the number 8 position here. Eaglov qualified with Cassia Golden Light. So Eaglov there making day 2 because of one of the players. And of course, as you remember, the top 8 players are in. If one of the players cannot make day 2, then the 9th place player will advance. And if there's 2 players gone, then the 10th player will advance in. So Eaglov making the cut here today due to Esotericist not making it for day number 2. So let's go ahead and go into the rules for the CCS. Again, standard constructed happened yesterday. That was stage 1. Stage 2 today is going to be the draft. So players have already completed drafting and they're going into deck building at this time. And then we will learn up the pairings and get into the action. As a course reminder, today is best of 3 single elimination until we crown the next Cosmic Crown champion. Let's go and take a look at prizes for today. All of the players today are in the money, which means they will walk away with some type of monetary reward for the tournament today, even if they place last. But first place, of course, walking away with $2,000 in that animated Cosmic Crown Showdown sleeve. Second place going to walk away with $1,000. Third through fourth will walk away with $500 each, and fifth through eighth is going to be walking away with $250. So all players definitely walking away with at least $250, but of course, they all want to be the next Cosmic Crown Showdown champion. So players are currently in the process of completing their decks, and we will start bringing you matches as they occur. One thing I wanted to do was kind of just go over. We talked about how the decks were pretty diverse from yesterday's tournament, and I want to bring up Hex PvP tools, which uses the Hex API to pull up some of that information. We can maybe do a little more of a deep dive here on some of these decks while we're waiting for the tournament to start. Looks like it's about 5 minutes left until they start. Then there's games, and then we'll start be able to cover matches that way. So um, let's go ahead and pull up Hex PvP tools. We'll take a look here. Of course, we saw Raposa here with that Sapphire Diamond Taktaksha deck going undefeated. Stunt Bomb, though, playing Takahiro, I think of note. Well, actually, we'll just take a look at the top 8 decks, and we'll take a look and see what they were consisted of. Hacky, we see Raposa here 7-0 with that Sapphire Diamond um, control deck. What are your thoughts on this deck, Hacky?
Sapphire Diamond has been strong very recent in recent metagames as well. We haven't seen it make as big of a splash in any recent constructed. We had the Sapphire Wild Turns and Wild Diamond Momentum really take the spotlight, with Candles being pretty much the third. With the gem rotation and the way that momentum and aggro with has tended to work, the Diamond Sapphire deck hasn't had as much opportunity to come out and shine. With Doombringer's release, we see that Scour the Archives and Hawkward Turn are added into what is very similar to the builds that we've seen before. One Psychic Ascension and Annihilate thrown in here as well. But Scour the Archives eventually allows a player to search for its win conditions. A lot of times you would see Sapphire and Diamond waiting for its win condition a little later in the game, trying to get into its Psychic Ascension. But with Scar the Archives, once the game is into the late game with Tachatka, we'll talk about that power and how it can be used. Scar the Archives can get the Psychic Ascension or whatever other win condition is needed and really boost the player to victory. Tachaka's power to bounce a troop and make it one cost has multiple ways it can be dealt with. In a the Hawkward Turn transforms an opposing troop uh, into a sapphire troop, and bouncing that with Tachaka's power, it doesn't matter that it costs one. If your opponent's not sapphire, they can't replay that. So a that is a solid answer as well as the Chaka power can be used to later on hold up and interrupt like Weave into Nothing and deal with it coming back in. Scour the Archives also useful for grabbing things needed. We saw Raposa grab Silvertail and Adjudicators to keep health up and alive against faster decks, dealing more damage, allowing it to withstand and get to the turns where it can start completely controlling the game.
Yeah, definitely, definitely a very potent deck. Obviously, going 7-0, and we'll see how Raposa will do today. Let's take a look at Stunt Bum. Stunt Bum playing a token deck here, and went 6-1. We did feature this deck on stream. Really exciting Blood Diamond with some interesting tech in there. What are your thoughts on Zoras Rectory, or this deck specifically, Hacky?
I can start with Zoras Rectory. The Zoras Rectory is socketed with the Major Diamond Battalion. So those dreadlings it's creating makes all other troops +1/+1. So these dreadlings are no slouch. They provide a lot of damage. If even two of them will provide a lot. This is an aggressive deck, but also one as it relies on a lot of rebirth and rebirth and creating lots of troops. Llama herders, Blightbark reserves also create zombies, spectral attendants. Lily Grove Warden means that every dead troop on Stuntbum side of the field comes back as a phantom, also benefiting from Zara's Rectory. It goes wide with Commander Prompt. They all get plus attack and just try to slam into the opponent as much as possible here. And with Brilliant Annihilix, Hero Fall, it also has the way to pierce through when an overwhelming board might be stopping smaller attacks from things like Llama Herder. We saw Llama Herders do lots of good, along with Graven Geist, a flight and give everyone scrounge. And there are going to be a lot of troops in the crypt in this deck. They're going to keep attacking in, and Graven Geist makes great use of that as well as being evasive itself.
All right, so let's take a look at our third place deck here, Cassia Golden Light, also with Joe Zimmer's. Looks like they were running two different setups here, but fairly similar though. I remember this give up the Geist and use of light 'em up. But Hacky, what do you think about this version of Candles?
Up version of the Candlekin deck has become more popular, and given that Avalanche, Wild, and Diamond is prevalent in this format, we can see that both player give it the Geist build has Wings of Wax in to give large Candlekin flight. Lady Avalanche tends to not have Skyguards, so if the momentum is too great to allow big 7/6/6/7/7 Candlekins through, the Wings of Wax can end the game by just swinging through the air. Liventh as well. We saw Liventh in a game yesterday also proved to be an evasive threat that can finish things off. We saw some builds run Brilliant Annihilix as well. I don't think either Joe Zimmers or Give It the Guys had them, but this is a deck that wants to prey on the more control decks in the style. It becomes bigger and faster than a lot of possibly some of the Sapphire Wild turn decks and a lot of the more controlling decks. It's an easy to build deck and an easier to build deck, and it is still going to be a force. Any deck you build should be ready for one of these.
All right, so that was Give Up the Geist. We saw Joe Zimmer's as well. Light 'em up. Pretty similar build than as Give Up the Geist. So I don't know if you really want to comment on this, but we can move on to the next deck if you want.
Very much those Zimmers. Also, same things apply. Candlekin deck, pretty sweet.
All right, so we had Ruik Thar as the only Lady Avalanche player. Lady Avalanche showing its form in the past few CCSs. What are your thoughts here about Diamond Wild Momentum?
The change to Lady Avalanche charge power from 4 charges to 5 charges has made the deck's timing a little bit different. In terms of the power of the deck, it still retains much of its power when it gets to 5 charges. It is still going to be potent, but it does affect how it interacts its speed against other decks. Powerful. This is one of the. This is still a pretty typical build with a couple of Merry Caravans for that other alternate win condition, but bringing in Brilliant Annihilix as that threat that is hard to deal with without prismatic cards.
All right, and let's move on to our sixth place deck. This is Enema playing Sapphire Wild Turns, and this deck is can be a lot of fun when it combos off. What are your thoughts on Enema's deck?
Enema representing Sapphire and Wild, the Blackberry Knight. We also saw players yesterday try out Korak of Stone, a extra resource charge power as well with this. This is mostly the build that one of Primordial Grok was relevant in matches yesterday as well. Wants to get early troops, consult the Talon, Dreamsmoke, Diva, and Rowdy Piper, try to draw cards. It wants to get to turn 6 and turn 7, get its resources back with a Rowdy Piper. Piper or Sugar Rush, Eyes the Heart for some extra turns, and then a combo off. Not surprised to see it here, but there's many decks. This and Diamond Wild Momentum are the decks that many people are gunning for and are building their reserves around.
All right, let's move on to our next deck. Etruria playing Rihanna to Flame. Of note, Rihanna to Flame, this is the first time the champion has been in the top 8. Blood Ruby, refuel with some interesting tech involved in this. It was really exciting to cast this match yesterday just to see that. What are your thoughts on Etruria's version of Blood Ruby refuel?
Some versions don't have anything past the 3 drop. Etruria has decided to put in a 1 of Scorpionox and 4 Coiling Nebulax for some crush reach. A lot of decks do throw in a lot of 1/1s to be able to stop decks like this. 1/1s stop Giant Candlekin and the like. And Coiling Nebulax and Scorpionox are both cards that gain health on Scorpionox and give rare portals on Coiling Nebulax. Are both crush, try to get that ending damage through, even though they cannot be taken, but brought back by Zomboys or Refuel. So a few copies of Zomboys and Refuel were traded for those. In general, though, plays all those early troops, has the familiars out to use the Rhiannon of Flames charge power. This is a new deck that wasn't possible just 3 weeks ago. So it showing up in the top 8, a good indicator that this is a deck to watch for in the future.
All right, let's move on to Esotericist, our last top 8 from yesterday, playing another deck with Tiktakcha. This was a Ruby Sapphire version. Hacky, what do you think about this deck?
A completely different way to play the same champion. This deck plays the Chatka. It can also do like the Diamond Sapphire version. It can also bounce a troop and be ready to interrupt it with Unhenge. And Unhenge is pretty key as most of the troops in this deck end up being elementals, so Unhenge is a 1 cost interrupt target troop. It plays a lot of aggressive Ruby and Bolt Spasm and Righteous Outlaw, but it's not fully aggressive. It tries to get some bigger troops when it can discard. With Candlegast, Briny Ray allows the deck to dig through, cycle, and make its hand exactly what it wants. So we definitely see people using Briny Ray in this and other decks in Sapphire and Ruby to both deal damage in the air, a fast 2/1 flight. Uh, Conjured Candlegas, Alchemite also doing really well as a later game threat that attacks, draws more cards, which is what this deck wants, and if answered, can simply discard a card and bring it back to hand. In this deck, not the fastest, but also with some reach into the later game and answers for things that you might see, especially as many of the big decks in the format, the decks to gun for, the momentum and the turns deck, Unhinged stops its key cards for a mere 1 resource. So I expect to see more decks like this in the future.
Yeah, and one thing I will say, if we look at the top 8, I mean there was a good variety of decks and champion choices, and I think this is probably like one of the most diverse metas we've had in a while with the release of Doombringer. I mean, if you take a look at the top 10 on the standings here, you only have 2 champions that are used more than once: Cassia Golden Light and Tiktacha. The rest are individual champions. And overall, I think it was really exciting. Was there any decks that we saw yesterday that you were really surprised to see or excited about? I have a couple in my mind, but what are your thoughts about some of the decks we saw yesterday?
I'm not really surprised to see like any particular deck make it into the top 8 this format. It is a relatively new format. The champion changes have given rise to some more decks, and it's only been a few weeks so far. So as Hex bashes and other tournaments keep occurring, I do expect players to start to galvanize and figure out the relative strengths of a lot of these newer decks as the Old Guard, the Blackberry Knights, the Lady Avalanches are reevaluated in light of what is available.
Yeah, you see people start to do, interesting tech to deal with some of these threats. We saw the Rhiannon of Flame deck run into Diamond and the Wayfaring Sharpshooter. A lot of the aggro decks actually running into Wayfarer Sharpshooter. Humunculus's deck that was running Blood Ruby with Sapphire for things like Runebind and Briny Ray. So it's interesting to see people starting to branch out and take some of these decks and make them their own and find some interesting tech to surprise their opponents. All right, so we are still currently in the quarterfinals. It looks like a few games are into game number 2. As a reminder, if you are looking to compete in the next Cosmic Crown Showdown, you have an opportunity to do that coming up with the ladder reset. And there's also going to be some changes when it comes to the ladder with cosmic coins and siege coins, and also how you can level up on the ladder. I think some good changes and some good rewards as well, Hacky.
Indeed, this has been interesting news that has come out in the past few days.
So let's um, we could talk a little bit more in depth about that if you want, Hacky. We can
Do you
pull up.
have a match ready?
Oh, we do. Perfect. 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 All right. So let's get that going for everyone. Again, my name is Hacky. My name is Snake. I'm joined by Hacky here on the Cosmic Crown Showdown day number 2. Top 8 players will be competing for a chance at the first place prize, and which is $2,000 and the Cosmic Crown Showdown sleeve. We did have one change from the roster from yesterday. Eaglov taking the number 8 position due to Esotericist not being here for the tournament today. So, given an opportunity now to compete, will have at a minimum $250. Esotericist will walk away with the ninth place prize as a result of not being able to compete today in stage number 2. So we are just waiting for the match to load up here. And we will get started.
Load it up whenever you're ready.
All right, just waiting for it to pop up here. All right, this next matchup is going to be Stunt Bum versus Give Up the Geist. Looks like Stunt Bum is the Rabid Rider, a champion that has recently been changed. Give Up the Geist is our Obliteron Solus. Let's take a look at opening hand. Stunt Bum here with a pair of resources, Ruby and Diamond. Looks like Startling Vine Toad times 2, One Hit Wonder, Boon Bunch, and a Ender Troop, which I can't see off the top of my head, but I'm sure Hacky will go over that. For Give Up the Geist, we see triple Sapphire Shard. And I can't see the rest of the cards there. So, Hacky, I'll let you take it away. Let us know what you think about these opening hands.
Eclectic mix of cards here. Stunt Bum is the Rabid Rider of powerful Ruby and Wild Power to give it +2 attack and Feral to a troop. The Feral being the most important part. That troop won't be able to be blocked by less than 2 troops. And a bunch of powerful prismatic cards in this hand. One Hit Wounder, Startling Vine Toad are quick 2/2s that give a troop +2/+2 when it enters play. So used as a combat trick on a stick, a Boon Bunch, and a Rage 2 Steadfast Bright Tusk Terminus. A great curve here, but it is missing Wild, and Wild is what is necessary to make this hand work. Given the Rabid Rider, I will presume that Diamond is more of a splash, but this format in Doombringer encourages people to grab fixing and play more than 2 shards. So Stunt Bum has an option to mulligan this on the play and not being able to do anything on these thresholds till turn 3. I would go to 6 cards, possibly even play more resources just to try to make sure I get the thresholds I need, something that should be common in this format. Give Up the Geist, very similar. Only Sapphire Thresholds and a deck that contains both Diamond in Shady Gourmand and Bloods we see in Sin of the Deep and the Cannibalize that the Shady Gourmand creates. I think that Give It the Geist can mulligan this, but does have 3 resources to play Briny Toad. Can discard a card to give it flight, so even cards that can't be played to the threshold might be able to give rise to a 3/1 flight. But this is limited. The decks may not be as tuned as all the players want. We have 8 skilled drafters in this draft, so it is up to the players to decide whether to keep or mulligan.
All right, let's see what happens here between these players. Again, we are in the quarterfinals of day 2 of the Cosmic Crown Showdown. Going to crown our new champion today. And let's see what our players will be doing. Give up the Geist. Will give up the Geist mulligan here or keep the hand? All right, just waiting for the match to start here. Hacky, do you start it up?
I have started up. You might be on a very large delay, but I think we wait through it.
Let me. I'll just reload here in a second. Oh yes, huge delay here. All right, sorry about that. So game one, yeah, that was a huge delay. I apologize. I'm not
We
sure
can
why
try
that.
this again.
Yeah,
There's
we
a pretty simple thing that happened in this game, so let's go ahead and reload that one.
sure. All right, let's try this again. Looks like everything should be running smoothly now.
All right, technical difficulties on our side. All right, technology is the vehicle of esports. I borrowed that from some fellow casters.
All right.
So, so give it the Geist is going to mulligan this hand. Stunt Bum is going to decide to keep this hand. I did mention that Stunt Bum cannot currently play anything in this hand and decides to keep. Give the Geist when on this mulligan is going to draw into Blood and Sapphire and two troops that he can play immediately. Killblade of the Milky Eye and the Briny Pod.
That's good. All right, here we
So we're
go.
going to go ahead and go.
All right, so we see Diamond Shard here for Stump Bum. Back over to give up the guy standard blood resource and Killblade turn one. Cloud Speak for Stunt Bump. We'll play out the Ruby Shard. Currently can't play, as Hacky mentioned, anything in hand. That one hit will take Stunt Bump down to 22. Fuel Fuel Flinger not going to do anything. This Briny and this Killblade going to hit for 3. Stunt Bump at 19. And Stunt Bump now does have a play in hand. But there's mounting troops here that continue to build up here for Give Up the Geist.
And although Stumpum has some excellent cards picked up in this draft, keeping that starting hand is going to prevent him from playing any of them and answering this board.
Wow, continually just getting smashed here. Curio coming out. Unfortunately, the resource or the thresholds here are nothing that he can use here. He's already has Ruby and Diamond, and Sapphire is nothing he's playing. We're going to continue to see Give Up the Geist go wide here, swing, and Stunt Bum not able to find anything. And Give Up the Geist will take game number one.
This is actually a fairly common thing in this draft format. The prismatic shards that you're encouraged to play mean that the shard base and fixing base needs to be different. So it has taken personally, and a lot of fellow players, it has taken some time to get used to it. And some players, sometimes luck is a factor, but also not fearing the mulligan. I'm sure Stunt Bum would have drawn in 6 cards would have been better what ended up happening here. But Stunt Bum having another chance in game number 2. Let's hope that we can see a match.
You know, it goes back to like you said you had mentioned before, like fixing is critical here in order to be effective. Uh, and sometimes sometimes if you don't get the fixing you need, things can be a little more difficult than you want. So hopefully, like you mentioned, hopefully Stunt Bum here can force a game number 3. We take a look at opening hands. Stunt Bum here with a couple of resources. Turn 2 play here with that Fuel Flinger One hit wonder, Cloud Speak, Pummel, and another piece of removal. Give up the Geist with double blood and single sapphire shard, so 3 resources, and Untimely End, and Briny Toad, and some other great cards here. Hacky, what are your thoughts here with the opening hands for game number 2?
Stump Bum has some powerful cards, and really the only thing stopping Stump Bum here is those thresholds. Fuel Flinger, quality card, creates a Scorch, scorches Ruby, and puts it into your hand, so that can deal with a lot of early threats. We've seen multiple one-hit wounders, and those are a 2/2 that attacks as a 6/6 crush the first time it attacks, can give them flight with Cloud Speak Hermit. So Stump Bob definitely has powerful cards, but just needs to grab that, get that Ruby to enable everything. Give up the Geist also has some pretty powerful cards in here. Untimely End destroys an attacking or blocking troop. We saw Blightbark Courier come in the previous game. A super annoying truth. It has flight, it has rebirth, so the first time it dies, if it's in the crypt, it comes back. And we also see a protection racket at X cost quick action that gives troops +1/+1 and invincible this turn, can turn a battle very quickly. So also powerful cards on the Obliteron Solis player. In terms of keeping this hand, Stump Bomb has 2 of the 3 threshold, has just come back off of a game where threshold was an issue. Needs a Ruby to complete this hand. May or may not get it, but at least can get a Fuel Flinger out for an early troop. Give the Geist is missing diamond, but has 2 of the shards needed. Can get a
Briny Toad?
briny toad out on 3. Diamond completes it as well. So we will see both players keep Stump Bum off the back of the previous game has a decision.
All right, here we go. Stump Bum does decide to keep this hand. We'll play a Diamond Shard. Turn passes over to give up the Geist. Blood Shard comes down. Rowdy Piper off the top for Stump Bum. Turn to Fuel Flinger. We'll create that Scourge. We're unable to play it, though, due to thresholds as we go up to give up the Geist. Sapphire Shard, no play. Turn passes. Swing for 3. Give up the Geist now at 22 health. And we'll see that Briny Toad for give up the Geist. Back over to Stump Bum. Finds a Curio. And we're seeing a swing for 3 with the Briny Toad, no block, and Stunt Bum will fall to 20. Swing here, Killblade will block for Give Up the Geist. Diamond resource here for Give Up the Geist, really nice here. And we'll see that Violent Handmaiden come out. Create that Popper, and Rowdy Piper here for Stunt Bum. Glimmer Fox with that threshold capabilities here, able to for some fixing.
Finds Dreamsmoke Curio, can sacrifice that to draw a card, try to find a Ruby, or give an extra resource to be able to play the Cloud Speak Hermit, or get that Pummel out. But the flight options for Give the Geist are already here. The Briny Toad for flight, Violet's Handmaiden creates Phantoms, and Glimmer Fox, a quality threshold fixing. Stunt Bum has shown us 2 Curios in the deck, but they don't completely match the shards that Stunt Bum is playing. So Stunt Bum has Diamond, missing Ruby, the opposite for the previous game.
Yeah, Give Up the Geist here in control. Has the thresholds. Resources. Swings here. Briny Toad still on the ground. We'll see if there's a block here from Stunt Bum. Currently, Stunt Bum has just 1 card in hand that they can play. Pummel is that card. But it's going to be met with Untimely End with Give Up the Geist. So Rowdy Piper is now gone. Forced to get rid of a Immortal Tears. Back over to Stunt Bum. He'll sacrifice, draw a card. It is a wild resource, not a Ruby, though. And Stunt Bum here in a really bad spot.
There's all sorts of great cards in Stunt Bum's hand. 3 thresholds and not being able to find the thresholds needed.
Full swing here from Give Up the Geist. We see the block with the Boon Bunch against the Briny Toad. Still 6 damage here coming into Stunt Bum. This will take him down to 4. Protection Racket, though, going to knock it out. And that's going to do it lethal. And Give Up the Geist will take out Stunt Bum 2-0.
The threshold fixing is at a premium. You're going to see there's a lot of it in this set between root resources, Glimmer Fox, Hextricator, the Curios if they match your shards, and the players know that they need them. They are all splitting these cards among each other. And it looks like Stunt Bum had some powerful cards, but other players may have the keys that Stunt Bum needed to make that consistent.
Stump Bum still walking away with $250 for his efforts. So not too bad. I know that every player wants to make it and become the CCS champion, but still gonna walk away with $250.
Oh, not a bad showing, and again, congratulations for making it to the top 8.
All right, we're going to bring out our next match here. This is going to be Eagleov versus Etruria. Let's go ahead and take a look at these players here. We'll bring up their player cards. Eagleov, hailing from Russia, is 32 years old. Has a top 8 in the Hex Invitational, top 8 in the Platinum Plunder, top finish in a clash with 6 top 8s and 3 wins with the 5 Shards Weekly Series. He placed third in the Hex $100,000 Invitational. He's been playing TCGs for over 19 years, and after he competed in the Invitational, he traveled across the world or across the U.S. to learn more about the U.S. So I had an opportunity to meet Eagleov during the 100K tournament. Really great guy. And that is Eagleov. Let's go ahead and take a look at Etruria. Etruria, 25 years old, hails from Granite Falls, is part of Infinite. Has 2 top 8s in the CCS, not including today. Top 8, 3 top 8s in the Bash, a Clash win with a top 8, and 3 top 8s in the 5 Shards Weekly Series. He speaks Japanese conversationally, and he enjoys dream crafting, makes constructed decks that he enjoys thematically, and puts his own flair in, and is known as the Jank Master Flex within his team. That's pretty exciting. Let's go ahead and transition here into the match. Eagleov playing Chamberlain Augustus versus Rhiannon of Flame and Etruria. For Eagleov, we see 3 resources, one of which being Root, 2 Blightbark Couriers, Lily Grove Warden, and Soul Shattered. For Etruria playing Rhiannon of the Flame, we see 4 resources, 3 Ruby, 1 Wild. Looks like Haymaker, one of the Terminuses, and the Ruby damage action. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but Hacky.
Feast.
Yeah, Fatal Feast. Thank you. Hacky, what do you think about these opening hands?
Etruria is showing us where some of the wild and ruby cards went. This is a pod draft, so all the players taking each other's shard, and Etruria deciding to go Rhiannon of Flame with the recently redesigned charge power. 5 charges, give all troops +1 attack and crush. Give those a familiar. Either way, if Ruby and Wild gets some of its troops out, it is going to be a wonder. Only 1 troop available, and it's a cheaper one of the Terminus Ender troops made from 2 fusion troops fused together in deck building. This one is 3/3 speed and Skyguard. Fatal Feast provides some removal or damage to a champion with life drain and blood, so there might be some blood in this deck as well. And also Haymaker, it reverts a troop and gives it +4/+4 this turn. Great for getting back one shots or rabid powers. Eaglov, as Chamberlain Augustus, can give a troop rebirth with that charge power for 5 charges. Has 3 different thresholds in hand. Looks like there's some diamond, blood, and wild in this deck, and some powerful blood and diamond cards. Couple of Blightbark Couriers is a great start on 3. Those 2/2 flights with rebirth. Lily Grove Shambler is a neat 3/5 life drain that forces you to sacrifice a troop, but it gets +1/+1, as well as Soul Shatter. Destroys a troop, removal, a little expensive, but gains you some health back and it takes some from your opponent. E-Glove, probably nice for Etruria with 4 resources and removal. Probably a keep on both sides. We are in limited, so expecting the most consistent hands may not be what we can do.
All right, let's get it started with this quarterfinals match. Eagleov versus Etruria for a chance to move on to the semifinals. Turn on Eagleov. We'll see a Diamond Shard. Standard 1 resource play. Same for Etruria. Ruby Shard comes out. Back to Eagle Eye. Before the end, though, we'll see the Root Blood Shard come down for Eagle Eye. Back to Etruria. Ruby Wild Thresholds.
The Blightbot Couriers with Rebirth are really hard to deal with in Limited. The Fatal Feast can only deal with it once it is still there, so likely the best way to stand up to a Blightbot Courier is to be able to block it. But that is not currently possible.
Zom
Speed
Berserk.
Skyguard is there.
All right, for Etruria, we'll see a Ruby Shard. Here comes that Terminus. Speed and no block. Eagle start of the turn. We'll play out a Blood Resource. Now triple Threshold. Swing for 2. Etruria down to 22. Back to Etruria. Eagle now. Start of the turn. Wild Shard now at 5 resources. We'll see that Lily Grove Shambler and then the activation of Champion Power. Turn back to Etruria now at 5. Looks like Etruria also has a Heart of Agony here. We'll see Fatal Feast to removing one of those rebirths back over to Eagle. Here comes the Shambler. Haymaker, though, going to take care of that Shambler. And Eagle starting to go wide here.
But the Rebirth power was put on the Shambler earlier a few turns ago, so it is live and it is going to continue to grow.
Eagle here with the 2 flyers here. We're going to see Soul Shatter take care of those blockers. Etruria, after that hit, falls to 4. Handful of resources and no way to respond to the might of Eagleov's army here. And Eagle will take game number 1.
Having to spend cards to stop the Rebirth troops and having to deal with them again without finding cards to help establish that board. That is a commanding presence by Eagle in game number 1.
All right, we'll be loading up game number 2 here between Etruria and Eagle on the back of the Courier, swinging in and doing as early damage, and then following up with that removal for the full swing. And Etruria, unfortunately, not able to find anything but resources. Let's take a look at game number 2. Etruria here on the bottom with 4 resources. At least has a few resources. We see double Fatal Feast and Gem Crazed Berserker with Ruby Gem, probably Feral, but Hacky will confirm for us later. For Eagle we see 3 resources with a root, so 4 total. We also see Soul Shatter in hand, a Toad, and a Spectre, or not Spectre.
Spectral Attendant.
Spectral Attendant, thank you. Hacky, what do you think of our opening hands here for players?
On the play now, Fatal Feast and Gemgrade's Berserkers. A little harder to block with that Feral, but the charge power's a long way away, and we haven't seen too many of troops coming from Etruria's hand. This is probably still a keeper. Eagleov's deck isn't particularly fast, but with 2 removal, Etruria, this is kind of a hard one for Ruby and Wild to deal with so much Rebirth. Fortunately for Etruria, Eaglov does not have the Blightbot Couriers from the last time, but there will be a 1/1 Spectral Attendant coming out early, and a Startling Vine Toad could be a surprise later. It is a quick 2/2 that pumps itself. It could be itself or another troop or +1/+1, so a nice combat trick resulting in a troop. Eglov's got a perfect hand with a root and a threshold. Good luck there. Like a blood for that splash and Fatal Feast, but probably both players keeping these.
All right, let's get in the action here. Eagle with a game over Etruria. Etruria looking to force a game number 3. We'll see standard resource here for both players. We'll see a root at the end of Etruria's turn. Look like Eagle happy here with his resource and threshold pool here. We see that Gem Crazed Berserker with Feral. So needs 2 troops to block. Eagle going to swing here for 3. Rowdy Piper for Eagle Turn passes back to Etruria. Finds a Haymaker off the top. Fatal Feast on that Piper. Swing for 3. Eagle at 20. Etruria at 21.
Etruria can't let that Rowdy Piper go. This early in the game, replenishing resources just means the board gets overwhelming that much more quickly.
Again, that gem crazed berserker swinging in, not able to block because it needs 2 troops to block with that feral gem.
Having two or more things to block your troop means that you can get some additional value from your high attack socketed troops.
Soul Shatter onto that gem crazed berserker. Back over to Etruria, Ruby Shard at 6. Etruria also has a Yeti or not in hand.
Yeti or not can make 2 baby Yetis, or +1 2 to attack to your troops, or a combination thereof. With this charge power from Rhiannon of Flame.
And we see Yeti or not create 2 baby Yetis for Etruria. Attack phase here for Etruria. No open resources for Eagleov, so nothing in hand to respond. We'll swing for 2. Eagleov down to 22. Swing in Etruria at 10. Firepower off the top for Etruria.
Ruby's got a lot of pretty decent removal. Those Fatal Feast and the Firepower do damage to troops. But the Spectral Attendant, the Stomp atop, some early damage gotten in by Eglov.
Decision point here for Etruria at 10 health. Eagleov more than double at 22.
Churia has to make use of these troops as well as possible. Churia's got 1 combat trick in hand that relies on troops and 2 removals, but nothing in play is currently really worth the removal.
All right, we see activation of champion power, giving +1 attack and crush to Etruria's troops here. We see that Toad come down, going to give +2/+2 to itself.
Once Churia has to that is to use this Haymaker. But may end up waiting and see how Eglov decides to block this.
Spectral Attendant does have Rebirth, so if it dies, it will come back into play and lose the Rebirth ability. It's still crush damage also coming through here from Etruria with the champion power from Rhiannon of Flame. See the block here with the Attendant and the Vine Toad versus one of the Baby Yetis apiece. We see Haymaker, though, going to take out that Toad. Spectral Attendant will come back with Rebirth, and Eagleov now at 18. Back over to Eagleov. Lucky Coin will allow a Fate Weave. Swing here for 4. Etruria at 6. We see a Courier. Turn passes. And now for Etruria off the top. And unfortunately, Etruria here with 6 health. We see that Rebirth troop in the air. Firepower, though, going to hit that Courier, which means Rebirth is gone, which means the next time it dies, it will stay into the crypt. Start a turn for Eagleov. I believe he has Soul Severance in hand, Hacky? Is that there on the left?
Servitude.
Servitude. There we go. Etruria now down to 3.
Really needed to nuke that Rebirth troop out. With only 6 health, that only needs to swing 3 times to win. And though it would have been expensive, Firepower and Fatal Feast the following turn, but this turn of events is probably just going to be too much. +1/+1 and Rebirth. And there's even more Rebirth coming in.
So Eagleov will take down Etruria 2-0. And Etruria will walk away with 250 US dollars. So congratulations to Etruria for that. And Eaglov will advance to the semifinals with Give Up the Geist. Still have two more matches covering here in the quarterfinals.
We didn't see a lot of early game power coming from Etruria. Wild and Ruby really want its early game troops to deal damage so that it can push the damage later in the game. Both the Ruby and Wild focus decks that we've seen so far weren't able to pull that off. So perhaps there are more Ruby and Wild players that were splitting that were competing for the same cards in this draft.
All right, we're getting ready to bring you the third match of the quarterfinals of the Cosmic Crown Showdown. Looks like our next match is going to be Enema versus Joe Zimmers. We'll get that queued up here for you shortly. Again, my name is Snake. I'm joined by Hacky, and we are happy and pleased to be here bringing you coverage of the CCS. We're going to be crowning a new CCS champion today, and we'll take you along that adventure as we take a look at each of the matches through the quarters, semis, and, of course, the finals. Let's take a look at our next match here. This is Joe Zimmers as the Rabbit Rider versus Enema as Obliterant Solus. A deja vu, if you will, moment. We'll take a look at opening hands here for both players. For Joe Zimmers, we see a good combination here. Double Ruby, double Wide, Fatal Feast, Howling Rebel, and a Thistle. For Enema, we see double Sapphire, Root, and some other cards that I can't make out off the top. Hacky will do. I see Shroud. Hacky, what do you think about these opening hands?
We have our third Ruby and Wild player in Joe Zimmers on the bottom. Howling Rebel into Thistle Magus, socketed with Rowdy +2/+2 and Crush this turn. Enema on the other side looks to be Diamond and Sapphire with a Ruby Splash because we see Spell Bobble Gobblers in there. In terms of hands, it is actually a fairly slow hand from Enema and the not able to play Spell Bobble Gobblers just yet. On the draw, it depends on how much Enema thinks that he could get the Ruby to enable his hand. But otherwise, some pretty expensive cards in hand, so may not be surprised to see Enema try to mulligan if there are cards that can help stave off against aggression. Joe Zimmers as Rabbit Rider. This is game one. Players don't really have knowledge of what's in each other's decks, but do have knowledge of what cards they passed each other to other players in this draft. So Enema does have that mulligan option. Joe Zimmers can curve out with Howling Rebel into Thistle Magus with the Fatal Feast in hand, and we'll see where we go from there.
All right, let's go ahead and get started here between both players in the quarterfinals looking to advance to the semis. And let's get started. Standard resource here for Joe Zimmers and Enema. Root of Savagery off the top for Joe. We'll see that Howling Rebel and Root activation and response by Enema. Briny Ray in hand, but no way to play it. Also, wow, some really good cards over there on Enema's side. Howling Rebel here going to swing in for 3, and Joe Zimmers will take the lead in Hell 23-22. Back to Joe Zimmers. We'll play out a resource at 4 now.
Briny Ray and that Soaring Cataclysm, both amazing cards in this format, but gated behind Enema's Ruby Threshold.
All right,
In the opening hand may have influenced the mulligan decision, but we're not there at the time.
All right, we'll see that Idol Nazan swing for 7 here. Enema down to 15. We see a Shenanigator for Enema. Turn will pass back over to Joe Zimmers.
But Joe Zimmers has quite a curve out here and still holding this Fatal Feast, so they're just going to keep being damage to Anima's face.
Enema here staring down at a wide berth of troops. And probably had wished they got the Glimmer Fox in hand or early for that fixing. And Joe Zimmers will take game number 1.
Be overstated how important being able to curving out. If you're able to curve out in this format, you might be able to take advantage of an opponent summoning. We saw that in this game. Is going to need to come back in this next game to have a shot at the semifinals. But Joe Zimmers, we didn't even see blood in Joe Zimmers' hand, so this might be Joe Zimmers maybe double dual shard, which is a challenging but effective way to be consistent in this format.
All right, we'll be bringing you game number 2 between Enema and Joe Zimmers here in the quarterfinals of the Cosmic Crown Showdown. And here we go. Take a look at opening hands. Enema down here at the bottom with a good amount of resources here. Party Crashers, some interesting cards there. For Joe Zimmers, just 2 resources. And Munaro Sensei there for the draw. Some interesting cards. Howling Rebel as well. Hacky, what do you think of these hands?
Anima should be happy here with this opening hand with the Root of Purpose. There are all 3 thresholds that Anima is going to want, as well as Drifting Ruinant and Party Crasher. Some early plays on the play as well, so Enema is going to definitely keep this end. Joe Zimmers has a Howling Rebel and a Minario Sensei to be able to draw an extra card, as well as a combat trick in Spore Skin to give a troop lethal in Rebirth to make to get more value about through this Howling Rebel, and potentially the Howling Rebel can crush through some damage to the opposing champion for an extra resource to try to get some of these 5-drops into play, the Fiery Cataclysm and the Moss Ox. Rider's power, even more bit of evasion. So I think Joe Zimmers keeps this hand with that card draw and the ability to play those early cards.
All right, let's get started here. Quarterfinals, Joe Zimmers versus Enema. And we'll see standard resource play here from both players. Ruby Shard here for Joe Zimmers. Activation of that root for Enema at the end of turn. Interesting. Howling Rebel here for Joe Zimmers. Voltaic Blast off the top for Enema.
Really great quick action that scales and deals damage to troops. Could be used here. Could play the Resonant Erraticrux.
Voltaic Blast taking care of that Howling Rebel swing for 3. Joe Zimmers now at 20. We'll see a Patrol Bot as a little bit of a defense for Joel Zimmers. Diamond Shard for Enema at 4 resources now.
It doesn't have another Prismatic card to give the Drifting Ruinant flight. It would be able to block it regardless.
All right, we'll see Party Crashers come down with that Rowdy. With Rowdy, will be able to make target troop unblockable this turn. Back to Joe Zimmers. See a Wild Shard now at 4.
Anima did have the option of playing the Root of Innovation as itself for just a charge, but Anima keeping it might indicate that there's something in the deck that might need multiple threshold.
Nara Sensei will draw. Find a resource. Patrol Bot swinging in for 2. We'll see the root from Enema for a Sapphire Threshold. Ooh, Conjured Candlegast here off the top for Enema. And that is a Prismatic Troop. Ooh, and big pump
There
here.
is relevant.
Big pump here. Swing for 5. Joe Zimmer's down to 15.
Doomsayer, a pretty sizable 3-5 compared to all the troops here. Now that Drifting Ruinant is large and ready to attack.
Turn is on Joe Zimmer's. Firepower in hand as a piece of removal. Fatal Feast as well. Just waiting for this fiery cataclysm to resolve, and it does. Lost in the City off the top for Enema. That'll put 2 troops into their opponent's hands.
Pretty good tempo card pickup for Enema, as at some point that Fiery Cataclysm and another blocker can be brought back to the opponent's hand. That's a lot of resources lost.
Conjured Candlegas Prismatic comes out, which gives flight to the Drifting Ruinant, and Party Crasher is going to make unblockable. So here comes a swing, trying to mitigate some of that damage without Noro Sensei. Joe Zimmer's down to 8. Enema sitting comfortably at 21. We'll see Grapes of Wrath and Firepower taking out the Drifting here.
We know Lost in the City is a card in Enema's hand, so 2 blockers can be taken care of.
Joe Zimmer's, though, activation of that champion power onto that Fiery Cataclysm, which gives it Feral. So it needs 2 troops to block it, Feral and +2. So 7 damage that Enema cannot interact with. Enema now to 14. Draw for Enema's Voltaic Blast. Lost in the City is going to put 2 troops in the crypt, and that will do it exacties. And Enema will take game number 2.
Looks like Joe Zimmer's felt pressure to try to get damage in the Enema's board. Higher cost, bigger. Either charges don't use themselves, so trying to get 7 damage in, hoping to do so in the next 2 turns and try to get Enema down below. But Enema, with the Lost in the City in hand, got rid of all the blockers, and we are bringing it to game 3.
All right, just loading up game number 3 between Joe Zimmers and Enema. Take a look at opening hands for both players. Joe Zimmers, Double Ruby, Double Wild, Grapes of Wrath, Fiery Cataclysm, and Fatal Feast. Over for Enema, we see a single Ruby Shard and a Root Voltaic Blast. I don't know, interesting hands here, Hacky. What are your thoughts?
Joe Zimmers has a 1-drop and a 5-drop and a Fatal Feast. I think there isn't any blood in this deck to utilize the life drain out of Fatal Feast, but given the things, Grapes of Wrath really wants Rowdy and feels that this isn't enough damage to get through early. He's now seen the speed of Enema's deck. It tends to go into more mid-rangey troops. Joe Zimmers may mulligan this. At the same time, you're on the play. Your hand can get worse. Do you want to draw into the 2 and 3 drops and make it a relevant troop? I think Joe Zimmers overall will keep this hand. Enema's got an option on the other side. A Root of Purpose and a Ruby Shard means that is either a diamond or a sapphire. Enema is on the draw, though, so we can wait a couple turns to see if that resource comes by. Suffering and Whip Crack. Whip Crack does 1 damage to each opposing champion or troop, so a lot of the 1 defense troops like Grapes of Wrath, if they don't grow, will be subject to that Whip Crack as well as Voltaic Blast. Actually, just a lot of solid cards on Enema's side. It has some early game options. Sanctum of Suffering will start to cycle cards for Enema. So the start of purpose the root of purpose may just be a sapphire to allow that and get to that diamond faster to enable the Brightwing Terminus. But overall, I think Enema actually does keep this hand.
All right, let's get in it. Game number 3. Winner advances to the semifinals. And a very important game here between both players. Standard resource here for Joe Zimmers with that wild shard into a Grapes of Wrath over to Enema. Plays out a Ruby Shard. Passes the turn. Joe Zimmers with a Maniacal Entrepreneur off the top. We'll play that. Rowdy is triggered onto the Grapes, so a swing for one here to Enema.
The Grapes of Wrath is now safe from that Vine Whip, the Whip Crack.
We'll see the root activation at the end of Joe Zimmer's turn for Enema. Sapphire Shard comes down.
And on turn one was an easy decision for Enema and made that shard of purpose, the root of purpose, very clear what it needed to do.
Whip Crack is going to go ahead and take care of that Maniacal Entrepreneur here.
It won't take care of the Grapes of Wrath, but it will mean discarding a card and drawing a card. There's a lot of shards in that, and a lot of these discard effects will help cycle those extra shards that aren't needed at the moment into more useful cards.
All right, a discard as we go back to Joe Zimmer's one-hit wounder off the top. A Rowdy trigger there. The Grapes of Wrath swinging in for two now. Enema down to 22. Health totals equal between both players.
Powerful, powerful card if let go, and Enema really needs to answer this.
And answers he does with that Voltaic Blast. So one-hit wounder is now into the crypt. Draw for Joe Zimmer's Yeti or not. And Yeti or not is activated. Swing here for 4. Enema down to 18. Enema with the red, white, and blue threshold. 4 resources.
Just holding some power in that hand with all the flight. You have the 5-cost Necrotic, the Heartsworn Survivor. They're going to start coming down, and Joe Zimmers needs to find some answers to help deal with this.
A Terminus for Enema. Turn passes back over to Joe Zimmers. Finds Locke's weapon. A weapon pit. We'll play that out.
Eventually, all of Joe Zimmer's troops can be equipped. They'll be reverted with +1/+1. Not as useful on the Grapes of Wrath, but these baby Yetis will at least get a little bit more attack and potentially can take advantage. But the Skyguard on that Brightwing Terminus means that it will attack and also be a blocker. Way to get past that.
All right, we see activation of champion power. Prismatic cards go back in the deck. Draws a card. Swing in here for 3. Joe Zimmer's at 19. Enema at 14. Here comes that Fiery Cataclysm for Joe Zimmer's. Turn passes back over to Enema. Sapphire Shard. And just going wide. And all troops for Enema now in the air. One has Skyguard or Steadfast as well. So interesting point here for Enema. Down to 14 health to Joe Zimmer at 19. And we'll see what he does here.
This is actually looking very dire for Joe Zimmers, as Enema has a ton of attack in the air, a total of 14 attack. 2 turns, and Joe Zimmers is going to be dead, and there's no way to Skyguard, and the Fatal Feast can only target one of the smaller troops.
And because it's not in blood, we'll not gain health off of that. So we'll do 3, but not anything else. Skrill's Forge Fist for Joe Zimmers off the top after taking 3 from that hit from the Terminus. So 16 to 14 in favor of Joe, but Joe facing off against an aerial threat from Enema here.
Spell Bauble Gobblers, when it attacks, creates 2 random actions that Enema can play. So it likely prompts the answer of the 2. It's the more threatening.
Fatal Feast taking care of Spell Gobblers. Attack phase here for Joe Zimmers. We'll swing in with that Terminus. We'll see a block and a trade. 2 cards going back into the deck. You see Party Crashers coming out. for Enema. Enema also has Voltaic Blast in hand, so
Low enough health that the Fiery Cataclysm was a big threat, so does trade the Heartsworn Survivor for it. That's one of the bigger flight threats, and Joe Zimmers can breathe a little bit more easily, but still has some flight troops to take care of.
Enema's attack phase. Skyguard or Steadfast Troops swinging in for 3. Joe down to 13. Enema takes the health lead. Joe Zimmers here with a Howling Rebel off the top. Well, the Weapon Pit's going to activate. Revert and give +1/+1. To that Skrill's Forge Fist. Here comes the Howling Rebel. That Skrill's Forge Fist is a 4/4 with Crush.
Indeed, its Rowdy Gem makes it so the Skrill's Forge Fist is likely attacking this turn, getting some damage through. It's none of these troops have flight, so whatever attacks in is relevant. But really, it's only Skrill's Forge Fist, the Brightwing Terminus, its 4 defense being the major issue for Joe Zimmers here.
And we do see a swing with everything except for that Howling Rebel. Representing 10 damage.
Terminus can trade with whatever it wants, but everything else just trying to force as much damage as possible through.
So it's going to block one of the both of the Yetis. So 7 damage going through half of Enema's life total here, or health total. And we'll see Voltaic Blast take out that Skrill's Force Fist. And we go back to Enema. We'll play a resource. Champion power available. Draws a card. Ooh. I believe
Pick up
that's
for Enema.
Oppress.
It is Oppress the Unworthy. These evasive troops, not what Joe Zimmers was going to want to see.
And we see Oppress the Unworthy. That is a 6/4 Terminus.
+3 attack to one of your troops and -3 to an opposing troop.
We see a swing here.
Right,
Party Crashers coming in. This is 8 damage. Which means if Joe doesn't find an answer for that, the troops in the air will be dead next turn. Takes the hit, falls to 5. Grapes of Wrath off the top for Joe. Unfortunately, no way to respond to those troops in the air from Enema. Will play out the Grapes of Wrath, and that will do it. And Enema will take down Joe Zimmers 2-1.
Enema playing the overall slower deck, but wins off the back of overwhelming flight. Joe Zimmer's deck, we saw more earlier, Troops Grapes of Wrath really does want to win before such a board state can become a thing, but not able to do that in game number 3.
All right, we have one more quarterfinals match for you. And that is going to be Raposa versus Ruikthar. And we'll go ahead and get those matches queued up. By the way, while we're getting those to queue it up, I almost forgot this. And if I didn't say this, I think someone would mention it to me. But happy Mother's Day, by the way, to all those mothers out there. Happy birthday, or happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there who definitely deserve a day to recognize what they've done. So just wanted to mention that. Otherwise, I'm sure someone would say something to me. So get ready to queue up these matches here.
Seen 3 Wild and Ruby decks, and none of them have made it out of the top 8 so far.
All right, looks like we are ready to go. Ruikthar versus Raposa. Let's go ahead and take a look at the champion selection and opening hands. Ruikthar with the Blackberry Knight and Raposa with Madeline the Flayer. We see Ruikthar here on the bottom with 5 resources. One of those is a Heart of Agony. That's the second Heart of Agony we saw in this pod. A Bruising Battler and a Briny Toad opening hand for Ruikthar. For Raposa, we see 2 resources. Looks like a Terminus of some kind, Whip Crack, and Voltaic Blast, and a couple other cards I can't see. Hacky, what do you think of these hands for both players?
Rookthar has Threshold, I presume with Blackberry Knight, that Wild is part of this deck, and it looks to be uh, Ruby Sapphire and Wild. An interesting thing with this Heart of Agony, Rookthar can at some point play that likely on turn 3 or so and get a Grapes of Wrath Briny Toad. If that is a plan that Rookthar is okay with, he could keep this hand with extra thresholds. This is actually 7 charges and very close to another Grapes of Wrath on turn 6. So that might be a way something to stay with. Briny Toad and Bruising Battler, Rage 2, 1/4, actually pretty nice in this situation. So I think Rookthar actually does keep this. Raposa, on the other hand, only 2 thresholds, but has a Whip Crack available. Whip Crack is, if nothing else, 1 damage to an opposing champion and draw and discard a card. So a way to try to dig in for another card. Prison of the Mind, powerful stun, and only 1 more resource needed for Raposo to play this Tenebrous Vax. So it looks like with Madeline the Flayer, there's a bit of discard synergy in here. 5 charges and discarding a card to activate 3 damage to target troop. Actually, a very powerful charge power if you have the ways to discard.
All right, let's get into the action here. Quarterfinals match between Raposa and Ruikthar. Winner will advance to the semifinals. Standard resource play here for Ruikthar with that Sapphire Shard, Ruby Shard for Raposa on turn 1, and Immortal Tears for Raposa. We see a Glaciate off the top here for Ruikthar. Turn back over to Raposa. Sapphire Shard, Sapphire Ruby Threshold, no play. Turn passes back to Ruikthar. We'll see that Heart of Agony for the charges. Grapes of Wrath into Briny Toad. That rowdy will trigger +1/+1 out of the Grapes of Wrath, making them a 1/2. 2 cost 1/2.
The chance for Raposo to respond with the Whip Crack. The Grapes of Wrath entered play, and Richter immediately plays Brownie Toad, and it is already past the point where it can be answered.
We'll
Pick up
see.
really nice for Raposo. Is now a third resource is completely possible.
Ruby Sapphire Blood Threshold for Raposa. Tenebrous for Raposa back over to Ruikthar. We see that Bruising Battler and a swing for 5. Raposa down to 20 health.
It does give that Tenebrous Vrax +1 attack, so that could be an eventual large threat, but Ruikthar is holding Glaciate for it.
Still on Raposa's turn. 3 resources available. We'll see the Fetid Scavenger. Turn passes back to Ruikthar. Buzzkiller off the top. When Fetid Scavenger attacks, a random opposing troop gets -1/-1. That is a rabid ability, so 1-time use on attack.
Actually gets +1 attack with any champion discards its card. So in exchange, flight, it will also get a buff.
We see the swing here. Briny Toad in the air. Winning a possible trade here with that Grapes of Wrath. And Bruising Battler swinging in as a 3/4 Rager.
Bruising Battler is going to be a threat here that needs to be dealt with. Raposo may actually need to answer that with the Voltaic Blast soon. It has Rage 2, so the longer it's left up, the worse it's going to get. Every turn gaining +2 attack. Raposa's entire turn, and the Grapes of Wrath keeps growing. The Buzzkiller is now in play. Raposa has some decision to make here. So does still have the Prison of the Mind. Can X cost stun X troops, but that is also a turn spent. Raposo is down to 11 health, so can't take much more of this damage from Ruikthar.
Raposa, again, players taking calculated risks and time here to think about what they want to do. And we see Whip Crack. So that is also going to put Buzzkiller at 1 health. That Briny Toad is going to go into the crypt as a result.
This card is going to enable Madeline the Flayer's charge power, and that will answer the Bruising Battler, as well as leaving Raposa with more resources to decide what to do.
Because of the discard, Tenebris now at 4 attack. We see Fleeting Memories being played by Raposa. Tenebris Vraxid now at a 6/2 flyer.
It makes that Tenebrous Rax within range of dealing damage to Ruikthar in a few turns, but Ruikthar's last card is an answer to that. Raposa also has an attack with Defeated Scavenger incoming, and that could give -1/-1 to that Buzzkiller.
It's that RNG luck there. Because of the discard, Champion Power gets rid of that Brooding Battler. Again, the Champion Power says when you discard a card and you have the charges, you can deal damage, and does so onto that Battler. So, good hit there for Raposa. Whip Crack getting it within range of that Champion Power. Here comes Ruikthar, swing for 6. And with that, Raposa will fall to 5. We see Grapes of Wrath and Champion Power on that Venomous tracks. Venomous, so that is now in Glaciate. Raposa will need to spend 5 in order to free it from that Glaciate.
Raposa is still holding Fiery End as well, and that deals 3 damage to two troops.
And we do see Fiery End take care of that Grapes of Wrath and Buzzkiller. Fetid Scavenger swinging in. Raposa at 3. Savage Showdown in Ruikthar's hand as we're back over to Raposa.
Point in the game, 5 resources is a lot, and that Ice Block is probably going to stay that way.
We'll see that Terminus for Raposa. Back over to Ruikthar, finds Treacherous Search off the top.
Search can be used to trigger the Grapes of Wrath Rowdy once again, and that forces it to be blocked, or Raposa is going to take fatal damage.
Treacherous Search for 5. We'll see what Ruikthar pulls with that. Looks like False Confessions for Ruikthar will be able to interrupt target troop, and if you have a Ruby Threshold, you can also deal damage to your opponent. We see that Savage Showdown take out the Terminus. As we go back to Raposa at 6, Ruikthar at 7. See Painstroke Sisters in hand for Raposa.
Rekthar doesn't have the resources up to False Confession this turn, but that is a nasty surprise. I don't see that too often in drafts, so that may or may not be in the mind of players before it is played against them. Actually, very close a match now with that life drain from the battle earlier. Raposo is at 6 to Richthar's 7, so it'll be tense from this point on.
Excruciator for a threshold. Rummager will draw and then discard. Oh,
Can't
Painstroke's
attack.
Sister for Ruikthar. So both players have Painstroke's Sister in hand. Interesting.
Wrath attacking will mean that Raposo can leave it and swing back. So no longer Grapes of Wrath can no longer attack freely now. Painstroke's Sister provides another blocker and probably is Richthar's option here. Said that stun X troops is still in the hand of Raposo. To play here.
Two open resources for Ruikthar. Raposa does indeed do that, locks the troops down, and Raposa will take game number 1 here against Ruikthar.
That was an extremely close match that could have gone either way, both players with powerful cards. And doing the best they can. It can go anyone's way.
All right, we're going to bring you game 2 here between Ruikthar and Raposa, the final match in the quarterfinals before we move on to the semis. Looks like the match is queued up. Let's go and take a look at our opening hands for both players. Ruikthar here on the bottom. Double Sapphire. No wild shards in hands. False Confessions. Treacherous Search. Merry Elephant. Painstroke Sisters. And Simeon's Sycamore over for Raposa. Ooh, we got a Remnant as part of his draft pod there. Double Blood. Single Sapphire. Scribe of the Flayed Man. Holy value, Batman Raposa there. Getting some stuff done. Noxious turn. Hacky. Raposa here with a very spicy opening hand.
Indeed, with that Scribe of the Flayed Man, a lot of the discard that is in this deck makes a lot of sense, but that is really the only troop here. But with Threshold and a Engulf in hand to destroy or interrupt a troop for 4, pretty solid hand, and Raposo is probably happy with this. Ruikthar on the other side, I think Richter is going to mulligan that Treacherous Search, the only way to really dig in for some extra resources. And in his Trishard deck, getting at least 2 thresholds is something you will want here. So Ruikthar going to redraw this. No, Ruikthar does not redraw this hand.
Uh-oh. Ruikthar not mulligan here. Decided to keep the hand. That is interesting. We'll see standard Sapphire here for
Trust the deck and use Treacherous Search to look at the top 2 cards for something if necessary.
Raposa here with a blood shard, passes back to Ruthar. Ruthar with the wild resource off the top. He never had to worry about it. It was always there, right?
Never didn't have it.
Never didn't
Sometimes
have
your
it.
deck just delivers. That puts Richter in a much better position, can get that Simeon Sycamore out on 3, and with one more resource, the Merry Elephant can start to get damage in the air. Ruikthar got very close in the previous game.
Sapphire shard
A little bit
here.
more damage.
Treacherous Search at the end of Raposa's turn. So look at top 2 cards. Put one in your hand, the other one back into your deck. We'll see what he selects. Looks like Oracle Song and to a Buzz Killer. So we'll see a Sapphire Shard and Simeon Sycamore for Ruikthar.
How many higher cost cards Ruikthar's got that Simeon Sycamore can gain quite a bit of health from Rowdy.
Scribe of the Flame Man, turn 3 for Raposa. Back to Ruikthar. Champion Power creates that Grapes of Wrath.
How close the last game was, the health gained by Simeon Sycamore, even if it only triggers once or twice, is going to be key, along with this Merry Elephant. If Raposa does not use removal to take it out, it will start to do damage. But speaking of removal, Raposa does have 2 pieces of prismatic removal in hand now.
Jouncing Carnage an option as well. Ruikthar up to 26 after the trigger from Simeon's Sycamore. We'll see a resource here. Raposa at 4. We'll see a discard triggering the Scribe of the Flayed Man.
That was an interesting play because discarding the resource to put a resource in hand allows Raposo to play that for free by paying 3, which is the 5th charge needed to use the Madeline the Flayer charge power to take out that flight elephant.
We see Oracle Song here for Ruikthar. Drawing some cards.
A lot of resources to play a resource for free that does leave Raposo's card removal still in hand, ready to take on other things.
Ruikthar here with a Briny Ray in hand. I'm sure Raposa would have loved to have that. Here comes that Briny Ray. Full swing. We see a block. Raposa down to 22. Ruikthar still sitting pretty at 26 thanks to Simeon Sycamore health gain as we go back to Raposa.
Only has answers in hand from this point. Ruikthar's got the questions between all of the troops in hand, the Rebirth Topiary Sculptor, the Painstroke Sister, which will combo with Briny Ray. Ruikthar may just have the hand to force all the answers out and still have troops to go.
And we go back to Ruikthar. Raposa keeping all the resources available. Here comes Painstroke's sister. Simeon Sycamore will not trigger unless Ruikthar plays a 5 cost. Does have one in hand. We go to attack for Ruikthar. And we do see a full swing here. Painstroke's sister with that discard will do 1 point of damage. Looks like directly to Raposa. We see a block and that noxious turn onto the Scribe of the Flayed Man. We're going to see Swift Strike and some Life Drain and some attack. So this is going to be 6 Swift Strike damage with Life Drain. So even though there's going to be some damage coming in with those 2 troops and the Painstroke sister, Raposa is going to gain that health back.
Indeed, a big 6 health swing and trading with the largest growing Grapes of Wrath.
And we'll see Engulf here for Raposa onto that Briny Ray. And Raposa now at 26 health, equaling out here with Ruikthar as both health totals are now equal. Resource play for Raposa now at 7 resources. Jouncing Carnage still left in hand as a piece of removal.
Briny Ray was still a good target regardless of the Painstroke Sister, but the Painstroke Sister really making it important to stop Ruikthar from having a consistent way to discard cards and continually do damage with the Painstroke Sister.
Ruikthar with that root discard will do a point of damage to Raposa. Finds a root off the top. Resource for Ruikthar now at 6. That is a 3/3 life drain 3/3 troop there with life drain for Raposa. So in the air, going to be able to swing and hit 3 and gain 3. Painstroke Sister is going to swing, put Raposa down to 22.
Can throw down the Briny Toad and discard a card to be able to block that Gobbler, or play one of the other troops.
Briny Toad is the play for Ruikthar, threatening with that discard flight troop. Here comes the swing, discard. Painstroke Sister is going to hit Raposa to 21. Briny Toad will get flight. So a blocker capable there. Jouncing Carnage, though, going to take care of that Briny Toad. So a swing for 3, gain 3, so a delta of 6. And we see the survivor for Raposa. Back over to Ruikthar, finds another Briny Toad. We do see that trigger.
Mounting, though.
Yep.
Topiary Sculptor brings back a resource from your crypt into hand, so roots can come back to be discarded again. Oh, you.
Ooh, Painstroke Sister swinging in. takes the damage. Raposa at 21, Ruokthar at 27. Vetted Scavenger for Raposa off the top.
Knowing that a root just returned to hand for Ruikthar, Raposo can't block with the Heartsworn Survivor and have that live. Raposo's got enough health to take this 3 damage attack, so goes ahead and does so. For the Heartsworn Survivor would have been an excellent trade for Ruikthar.
Heart of Agony available here for Ruokthar. That would give Ruokthar the charges needed for the champion power.
Charges for the champion power followed by Briny Toad followed by Buzzkiller is a potential plan, but really getting the Briny Toad out at all to block one of these troops in the air is a thing. In fact, Briny Toad can block the Heartsworn Survivor with an extra damage from the discard to give it flight, can actually trade with that Heartsworn Survivor. So there is an answer.
And Raposa at 24 health, Ruokthar at 18. Raposa's just getting health with that Gobbler. We see the hit there with the Painstroke Sister off the discard to that Scavenger. Heart of Agony being discarded, taking out the Scavenger. Does have a 3-1 flyer. And we see the swing here for 7. Raposa at 17. Resource play. Turn passes back to Raposa. Resource for Raposa as well off the top. We'll see that swing and a block to take out the Gobbler. So a hit from 6. Ruokthar will fall to 12. But no more health gain available for Raposa from that Gobbler. Full swing here. 8 damage inbound. This would
Are hoping to get some extra damage in, but at this point, right now, Ruokthar is winning this damage race. If there is no answer, it is going to be enough.
Sharpshooter at the end of turn there will put Raposa at 11. Raposa still with just that shard in hand. Ruokthar does have a Buzzkiller.
Killer won't be enough. A full swing from Ruokthar is going to not be 11 damage, but force a block.
And a Merry Elephant for Ruokthar. Full swing here.
A Merry Elephant will change the math a little bit, as Scribe of the Flayed Man will block something. It will prevent some damage, and the Merry Elephant can block the Heartsworn Survivor, which means Ruokthar survives the turn, and one more turn gives Ruokthar the victory here. Raposo cannot answer this Merry Elephant. However, Raposo is sitting at 5 charges, so being able to discard a card means removal for that Merry Elephant.
So critical juncture here for both players. Ruokthar at 6 health, Raposa at 11. Full swing, alpha swing here from Ruokthar. And there needs to be a block with that Scribe of the Flayed Man. The only question is, what's that target? Goes against the Painstroke Sister. And we see the Merry Elephant and just shard for Raposa. Not what they were looking for. And Ruokthar is going to be able to stave off Raposa.
Extremely close game 2 that came down to top decks on both sides. Can't really ask for more in a limited game of Hex, and that is only game 2.
Yeah, exciting stuff there. And Ruokthar will force a game 3 here between Raposa in the quarterfinals of the CCS Stage 2. And we'll be bringing you game 3 here shortly. All right, looks like it's up. We'll take a look at opening hands here for both players, see what they're working with. Raposa down on the bottom looks like a Blood Shard, Sapphire Shard. Scribe of the Flayed Man in hand with Painstroke Sister. A Terminus. Wow, a little rock action there and Fiery End for Ruokthar. A good mix of resources here. Ruby, Wild, Sapphire. False Confessions, Voltaic Blast, a Dream Smoke Diva, and a little Terminus action there, or Apocalypse there. Hacky, what do you think about these hands?
I don't think Raposa's going to be happy with this start. Although described the Flayed Man and Planestork Sister, only 2 resources and missing the key Ruby threshold that almost every card in this hand needs. I think Raposa's going to mulligan this, at least for something to be able to draw out of this. Uh, on Ruikdar's side, a Dreamsmoke Diva will need an additional Sapphire, so the Ripclaw Apocalypse will need an additional resource, but he's on the draw and has 5 thresholds, so Ruikdar likely keeping this hand. It looks like Raposo, though, may keep this hand and just go in long.
Looks like both players keeping their hand. So Raposa betting and banking on Kismet, giving some help here with some resources. We'll see if that plays out in the next few turns.
Ruikdar isn't in danger of curving out as well, so Raposa can take a few turns into what's needed.
All right, no resource turn 3 for Raposa. And Ruikthar here with a third resource, Sapphire being the most important, so getting that double threshold for that Dreamsmoke Diva. And finding a root there off the draw for Raposa.
Root and Scribe of the Flayed Man can mean getting 2 resource plays in a turn, so Raposo can catch up potentially.
Blackberry Knight activation with that Grace of Wrath. Turn passes back to Raposa after that swing for 2. Ruinforge Rummager for Raposa.
You could play the Scribe, or you could play Ruinforge Rummager and try for another shard off the top. Or you could play Scribe and Ruinforge next turn at worst and try to get that additional play.
Here comes Scribe of the Flayed Man. And we'll see Voltaic Blast take care of that. So Scribe in and out. Back over to Ruikthar. Troops at the ready.
Rukthar has seen Raposo struggle to get resources. Ruktar's already at 5 and has the removal, is going to make sure that Scribe of the Flayed Man can't get back in here.
Little trigger of the Rowdy onto the Grapes and Dreamsmoke Diva. Swing for 4. Raposa now at 19. Ruikthar taking the lead here with health as we start the turn with Raposa and a standard resource.
The Topiary Sculptor is going to be a little bit of a problem with its rebirth and Runewood Feral. It's going to be a lot of damage over time. The Bloodwing Terminus is likely Raposa's best option for life drain and being able to block the Dreamsmoke Diva and get some health back.
And here comes the Terminus 3/3 and Flying and Life Drain. Start of Ruikthar's turn. We see the Heart of Agony. Going to get those charges. Activation Champion Power for the Grapes of Wrath. Terrible Temper. That's
That is
big.
That's going to make that board really big and super hard to deal with. The fiery end is suddenly not big. There is 18 damage, 18 attack for Ruikthar already, and it's all crush damage. Suddenly, this Bloodwing Terminus can't block and trade with anything.
Yeah, Terrible Temper. That is a thing. 15 damage, only able to swing in here. Grapes of Wrath, not swing. Oh, and that hit. Raposa falls to 4. And facing off against the crushing army from Ruikthar.
Even for the turn, that is a permanent. Brosie's Wrath is quite... Brosie's Temper is quite mean, shall we say. And use that Lost in the City to delay things slightly. Be replayed eventually, and that Bloodwing Terminus will need to block in order to survive. The Prison of the Mind can also stall for a turn. Can Raposo stall into something to come back in this game?
It looks pretty hard here. Raposa probably calculating the odds here, what they can do. Ruokthar, though, with just a monster army here. Grapes of Wrath, 3/4, 5/6, Crushing Beast. Dreamsmoke Diva in the air with 4/4 Crush and Spell Shield, so no way to interact with that. Remnant of Hatred.
Things on the board. Rookthar is holding a Savage Showdown, so there is going to be a battle to take out a blocker.
Ruinforge Rummager finds a Noxious Turn.
Somewhat, as a block can be made and health can be gained.
Here comes the swing here for 3. Ruokthar down to 16. And we do see that Prison of the Mind lock everything down except for that Dreamsmoke Diva.
Mine cannot target Dreamsmoke Diva, so playing it for 3 does take care of the troops possible, and the attack gives Raposo enough attack to survive this attack.
We see that Simian Sycamore for Ruokthar. Swing for 4. Raposa down to 3 health. And with only... Ooh, and Simian Sycamore going to trigger here. We see the battle there with that taking out the Terminus, leaving just the Ruinforge Rummager. Raposa staring at a monster army. And we see the swing for 2. The Valiant Swing.
Turn can make this a swing for 6 health, but that is still an overwhelming board. Lost in the City can't do enough either. Dreamsmoke can't be targeted it by it. Fiery End doesn't do enough damage.
Painstroke Sisters, Munaru Sensei. And this is all but over. Full swing, whip crack. Discard.
This is why you don't make Brosy Buck mad. Those troops become big and crushy.
All right, so that was the final match in the quarterfinals. We are now going to be bringing you matches within the semifinals.
Finals have concluded. We've determined our players in the semis.
So the players moving on into the semifinals, Give Up the Geist, Ruokthar, Igolov, and Enema. Our other players will be walking away with $250. Joe Zimmers, Raposa, Stunt Bum, and Etruria all being eliminated in round 1, but walking away with $250. So congratulations to them as we continue on our adventures here in the Cosmic Crown Showdown with the semifinal coverage here between our 4 remaining players as they try to make their way to the finals. Igolov, Enema, Give Up the Geist, and Ruokthar.
Glove and Enema first.
All right, we're getting ready to bring up those matches for everyone. Appreciate you guys all joining us here today on the official Hex TCG Twitch channel. My name is Snake. I'm joined by fellow caster Hacky. And we are loading these right now. All right, so first match of the semifinals is Igolov versus Enema. Igolov playing Chamberlain Augustus versus Enema versus as Obliterate Solus. Egolov's here opening hand. You see a little baby stomp. A Terminus of subtype, double blood, single diamond, a single wild for Enema. Looks like just double diamond and a root, followed by Shroud. Spellbobber Gobblers, Lost in the City. And Hacky, what do you think of these hands?
Iglov's got Threshold, can start off with a baby dinosaur. Ghostly Carcel is a 3/2 that's resistant to actions. Opposing playing action. And when a troop you control die, oh, actually, this is a different one. When a troop you control dies, it gets +1/+1. So Rebirth really benefiting, and a 3 for 3/2 solid. Ironclaw Terminus battles target opposing troop when it enters play with a pretty beefy 3/5 stat body. So Iglov probably happy with this hand and can keep it. Enema on the other side with double diamond and a root of innovation is 2 thresholds needed. The rest of the hand, really the power is in spell bauble gobblers. If Enema thinks that within 3 turns Enema can find a sapphire or a ruby, this makes the spell bauble gobblers a powerful play that Eaglov currently doesn't have a way to answer until Ironclaw Terminus. It'll create some actions and some advantage for Enema, but Evaporate King and Lost in the City give Enema some removal options. Probably overall a decent hand that Enema uh, can keep.
All right, let's get into the action here. First match of the semifinals: Igolov versus Enema. We'll see standard resource here for both players. Root off the top for Igolov. We'll see some baby stomps.
And though it has no text, that solid 3/2 can get a lot of damage in early.
Double diamond for Enema. Turn passes back to Igolov. Finds that bright bark courier off the top. That will come out. Swing for 3. Enema down to 22. Igolov taking the health lead. We'll see that root for a sapphire threshold. Turn back to Igolov. Blood shard. And we'll see a little ghostly action here. Swing for 5.
Anima has the option of using Evaporate on one of these troops, mainly to just delay damage coming through a bit. If so, it's probably going to be used on the baby Stompatops, but could also be used on the courier to force Eaglov to spend more resources to get that back into play.
Evaporate on the courier. Decides to take the 3. And Enema down to 19. Igolov at 23. Resource, no play. Root at the end of Enema's turn for Igolov.
Anima will be looking for any resource, makes everything in that hand possible to play, anything, including the river.
Igolov with a second courier at 5. So an option here, either with the Terminus or a Blightbark courier.
Probably going to be saved until there is a troop for it to battle, however.
Swing here. Courier is the play for Igolov. Enema down to 13. Champion Power draws a card, finds a resource. Back to Igolov. Spectral Attendant off the top. Resource swing and Enema down to 5. Courier into Spectral Attendant. And Igolov just going wide. Lost in the City is going to put 2 troops back into Igolov's hands. And we'll see the survivor here for Enema.
Anima doing what he can to bounce and force Eaglov to spend more resources to build this board up again.
We see the courier swinging in, second courier, followed by a little ghostly action. Enema at 13. Glimmer Fox down for a ruby threshold. So Voltaic Blast is now available along with the Briny Ray and a press. But Enema in a bad situation here. Igolov with 20 more health and a wide berth of troops.
Already down to 3. There's a Savage Showdown in hand. Enema can play a bunch of cards in here. Can get Spell Bauble Gobblers. It can give the the Heartsworn Survivor some flight. Could play the Briny Ray. Could now use the could oppress the unworthy to handle one of these rebirth troops, but it is just a lot to do and not very much time to do it anymore. And if Enema decides to, could withhold this information from Iglov and just take this to game 3.
Game 2.
Indeed.
All right, so Briny Ray as another blocker here. Still lethal on board.
All the opponent's board isn't representing that much attack. Fox, the Prestian, where they could change the combat math just a little, but the Savage Showdown and Ironclaw Terminus are both going to come out 2 blockers.
We'll see him press the Unworthy onto that Blightbar Courier. Turn passes back to Eagleoff. Well, that's a thing. A little Peregrine Shade. We'll see the Terminus, though. And we'll see Shroud with the Spell Shield to protect the Briny Ray.
Actually has enough attack to beat the opposing survivor.
Showdown will take down the Fox. Spectral Tenant will come back. Enema left with just the Survivor and Briny Ray on the field against Eagleov. Spellbobber, Gobblers, and Voltaic Blast in hand, but no resources for that blast. That hit will take Enema down, and that'll do it. Eagleov will take game number 1 against Enema.
Long without that necessary Ruby. Use the Root of Innovation early for Sapphire. Sometimes it doesn't happen.
All right, game number 2 loading up here between Eagleov and Enema. Eagleov taking game number 1. Enema trying to force a game number 3. Let's take a look at opening hands here for both players. For Enema, we see a Diamond Shard and a couple roots, False Confessions, Conjured Cattle Gas, some Shenanigators and Raving options here. For Eagleov, we see double Diamond, 2 roots as well, Rowdy Piper, double Couriers. Yeah, interesting hand here for both players. What are your thoughts, Hacky?
Enema's got Threshold now, Diamond and double Root of Innovation. And with Shenanigator getting these 5-cost cards, 5-cost troops out will be a Rowdy draw card and will be some shenanigans from Enema. On the other side, Eaglov has Threshold, those roots providing necessary fixing, and 2 Blightbar Couriers and Rowdy Piper. So those troops alone come out. The flight couriers will be flight threats that Enema needs to deal with, as well as Rowdy Piper. Trigger for the Rowdy Piper, yet still a pretty decent troop. And Eaglov probably keeping these hands.
All right, let's get going here. Eagleov up 1-0 over Enema in the semifinals of the Cosmic Crown Showdown. Glimmer Fox here off the top for Enema, so a little bit of fixing. Glimmer Fox will come down. Eagleov will root in response. Goes for that Ruby Threshold or Ruby Shard back to Eagleov. Over to Enema. We see Glimmer Fox hit for 1. Eagleov at 22.
Picked up a 3rd Blightbot Courier. These alone have been doing a lot of work. 2-2, and Enema has a lot of health to withstand a bunch of this.
Shenanigator Root in response. Back to Eagle-Ov. Blood Shard comes down. Here comes the Courier. As we go back to Enema finds a Sapphire Shard, we'll play that Sapphire Shard. We'll just pass, holding up that False Confessions. Here comes Courier, going to be met with False Confessions, and Eagle-Ov will take damage there. Discard of that Root for a Ruby Threshold. Brinery off the top for Enema.
This would be the first time Eagle is seeing the false confessions, and that's an effective way to get rid of it without triggering the rebirth.
Ruby Shard into Briny Ray. Here comes the full swing. Conjured Candlegas discarded and played for 3. Courier going to block. The Briny Ray come back thanks to Rebirth.
Trade that Briny Ray would be nice to keep, but it's got to get an attack in, gets a life off of that Blightbark Courier, and enables the Conjured Candlegas to come in for much cheaper.
Eagle-Ov here at 16 health with a Courier on the field against Enema's troops here. Conjured Candlegas was brought in last turn, but going to be met with Soul Shatter, so that will go in. Activation of Root, the start of Enema's turn now. We'll see activation of Champion Power. Party Crashers in hand. The Doomsayer back over to Eagle-Ov. Diamond Shard. Little Terminus action into Rowdy Piper. Here comes that swing for 2. Back over to Enema. Sanctum of Suffering is the card drawn. We'll see Party Crashers. And that is going to give Unblockable to the Shenanigator off the play. Sanctum of Suffering also for Anima, so going wide, and also that Sanctum here. A Courier number 3 now for Eagle-Ov, 2 on the field. Back to Enema.
But this Resonant Eradicrux has Rage that still Rebirth Blightbark Courier, and Enema can make one of these bigger troops also have flight.
Cloud Speak Hermit for Enema. When this deploys against target troop flight, we'll see what troop is selected. Party Crasher's also making something unblockable. Looks like that Eradicrux.
With the Rage, that'll be additional damage coming from Eagle-Ov. And I did say the Blightbark Couriers can do a lot of damage, but they're relatively small themselves. And against these larger flight troops that Enema is fielding, Eagle-Ov to come back from this point.
That Heartsworn Survivor going to come out. That's also going to trigger that Party Crashers, which is going to give Unblockable again.
5 unblockable damage from the Eradicrux. This almost can be a full attack, as Eagle-Ov's board isn't very large. We'll get a lot of extra damage in. 5 unblockable. There are 4 blockers. Bunch of trades. Eagle-Ov in trouble here.
Eagle-Ov will go ahead and give it up, and Enema will force a game number 3.
The higher payoff rebirths coming in for Eagle-Ov. The Blightbark Couriers high in number, but not enough, as Enema's got flight to defend that and to push damage through.
And here we go. Game number 3 between Eagle-Ov and Enema. Winner will move on to the finals. So a very important match here for both players. Opening hand here for Eagle-Ov. We see a Diamond Shard, a couple of Roots, Treat Machine, Vine Toad, a Courier, and a Baby Stomp. Over for Enema, we see Double Diamond, Ruby Shard, Root, Glimmer Fox for the fixing, Evaporate, and Briny Ray. Hacky, what do you think?
Got a curve. Eagle-Ov's got Threshold. They're overall not the biggest troops, but hopefully for Eagle-Ov, Stompatops can get through for a bunch of damage. Though has a Briny Ray, can get that out on turn 2, has Threshold as well, has plenty of resources, and the Briny Ray, although this is a lot of resources Enema is going to have, Briny Ray's discard then draw is going to keep bringing fuel coming from the deck. So Enema is likely going to keep this hand as well, hoping that Eagle-Ov doesn't have the removal for that Briny Ray.
All right, here we go. Game number 3. Winner moves on to the finals. Very important match here. We see the diamond right into the root, not even waiting. Eagleov's ready. Here we go over to Enema Ruby Shard. Back over to Eagleov. Finds a Vine Lash off the top. Here comes Baby Stomps coming in for Eagleov. Enema with that Sapphire Shard. Briny Ray online, turn 2. Discards a Shard. Swings for 2. Eagleov now at 21.
Can either use that Vine Lash on the Briny Ray or wait and get the Startling Vine Toad to try to block it, but that's 2 extra attacks that Briny Ray will get to do things. So we're likely going to see the Vine Lash come out from Eaglov to just take care of that Briny Ray right now.
Root activation for Eagleov. Finds Sinister Veil off the top. Goes for the Blood Threshold. Here comes Blood. And we'll see Vine Lash take care of that Briny Ray. Swing for 3. Enema down to 22. Enema with a Diamond Shard representing red, white, and blue thresholds. Back to Eagleov. Treat Machine. Swing for 3. Eagleov continuing pressing with that Baby Stomps. Glimmer Fox for Enema. I'm going to go and pick a threshold, a resource, and put that into hand. And a little oppressed there, so that Baby Stomps is now oppressed. Glimmer Fox is a 4-1.
Damage where you can, and press the Unworthy, a very potent card.
Blightbark Courier to end the turn for Eagleov. As we go back to Enema, we'll put it Prismatic cards back in the deck and draw a card thanks to Champion Power. Enema here with a very strong hand. Two Impress the Unworthy, 2 False Confessions, Evaporate. Here we see the swing. Blightbark Courier blocks. It's now a -1, 2 defense troop. Rowdy Piper going to be met with False Confessions. Oof.
Are going to be good. Not only is this Glimmer Fox gigantic now, but Eaglov's going to take 3 damage each time, and so much tempo loss from these troops being interrupted.
Swing here. Eagleov at 19. Rebirth back onto the Blightbark Courier. Does have a Vine Toad in hand to respond. Full swing. Discard. False Confessions on the Toad. No thank you, Enema says, as Party Crashers comes down with that resource after that swing. Eagleov now at 14. A Terminus here off the top. We see Sinister Veil, though. Going to be targeting that Glimmer Fox.
But Enema's got one resource and Evaporate in hand. Might go ahead and save that.
Evaporate, saving the Glimmer Fox, coming back out, also getting a resource off the deploy. And we go back to Eagleov sitting at 10. Enema has just dumped the hand and is in top deck mode. Eagleov, though, with the Terminus and that's going to do it. Enema will advance to the finals.
A chain of the right action at the right time, keeping tempo up. Enema is going to commandingly win this game number 3.
Yeah, those False Confessions were huge for Enema. All right, we're going to bring you the next, or the last match in the semis. This is going to be Give Up the Geist and Ruikthar. We'll get those loaded up for you guys as we find out who Enema is going to meet in the finals. Let's go ahead and take a look at our opening hands here for both players. Ruikthar playing the Blackberry Knight with a plethora of resources, double wild, single ruby and sapphire, voltaic blast, a little terrible temper. We saw that earlier do some work. And Simeon Sycamore for Give Up the Geist. We see a blood and sapphire shard, little gobbler, little echo horn, a courier, and a couple other cards. Hacky, what do you think about the opening hands here?
Ruikthar doesn't really have a fast starting hand here, but with Threshold and Simeon Sycamore at the very least, Ruikthar is going to keep and draw into fuel for the future. Obliteron Solis by Give Up the Geist. We've got Blightbark Courier, we've got Echo Horn, but kind of missing the diamond to make any of that work. The Gruesome Gobbler is still coming up at 5 and needing resources for all of these. So I think if the guys could keep this hand, depending on how Give It the Guys fixing feels, but I would be uncomfortable relying on one resource to make any of this happen.
All right. Let's get in the action here. Game one of the semifinals between Ruikthar and Give Up the Geist. And we'll see standard resource plays here. Turn one for both players.
The guy does pull this diamond from the top of deck, so all those resource problems, no problem here.
Ruikthar deciding to go with the Sapphire here. Turn two. Echo Horn for Give Up the Geist. Back over to Ruikthar. Ruby Shard into Simeon Sycamore, looking to gain some health and gaining advantage here. We see the Courier come out, the Echo coming out for Give Up the Geist. Grapes of Wrath into the little Battling Bruiser. Or Bruising Battler. Courier swinging in for two. Here comes Killblade and Briny Toad for Give Up the Geist.
An option to swing in with this Bruising Battler and use this Voltaic Blast to answer the lethal threat and try to trade with some things. But I don't know if Ruikthar has something else in mind. And Give the Guys actually just have a bunch of this Engulf in hand.
That is just nuts. Two Engulf, one Sins of the Deep, and a Gobbler action. Swing for two. Ruikthar now at 22. Voltaic Blast is going to target that Killblade, hoping to make sure that that Brooding Battler can swing in. Back to Ruikthar. Briny Toad out the top. Here comes the swing with the Battler.
Ruikthar wants to try to build up some sort of board and get this terrible temper off.
Engulf is going to hit that Battler. Briny Toad to finish the turn for Ruikthar. We see Give Up the Geist with the Fox. Activation Champion Power, draws a card. Activation of the Root at the end of the turn. Ruikthar here, now with more than enough resources. Terrible Temper now on the field and in play. And those are some very angry troops for Ruikthar.
You can get Flight on this Briny Toad.
Full swing here from
Force
Ruikthar.
blocks.
Discard for Flight.
That's all of Ruikthar's resources. All of his cards gone away.
Give Up the Guys with a full swing back. Ruikthar now at 22. Sensei draws into a Root.
Root will mean another Black Grapes of Wrath coming in from Ruikthar, but not much else. Fortunately, Ruikthar is at high enough health and Give Up the Guy's board small enough that there isn't a threat right now.
Killblade is on the field, though, so that will prevent a favorable attack from Ruikthar.
In that Killblade of the Milky Eye and the Engulf by Give Up the Geist, an attack will leave Ruikthar with almost nothing, so Ruikthar does need something in addition to get this last damage through.
No swing as Ruikthar passes over to Give Up the Guy's Courier swing again. Gobbler coming down. Echo creates an Echo. Merry Elephant, though, for Ruikthar off the top. Resource will get to Champ Power to create the Grapes, and here comes the Merry Elephant. 3/3 flyer with Crush. Give Up the Geist, though, does have a way to remove that and will engulf it to remove the flying threat. Swing for 5, gain 3. Ruikthar now at 15. Give Up the Geist takes the health lead here.
The Gruesome Gobbler unanswered is going to completely swing the game in Give the Guy's favor. And with that Sin of the Deep being unblockable by discarding a card, that might be too much now.
Wow, what a match there. And Give Up the Geist will take game number 1.
Those engulfs being able to remove key threats, Milky Eyes, forcing Crush troops to trade with these little guys and not do lethal damage. Cards for Give Up the Geist in game number 1.
All right, here we go. Game number two. Ruikthar down to one or down 0-1 to give up the Geist. We see five resources here, one of them being a root, a Necropolis Sharpshooter, and Briny Ray. For give up the Geist, we see a couple Sapphire Shards. That's it. Immortal Tears, Protection Racket, Untimely End, Hack, and the Venom. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Hacky, what do you think about both of these hands?
Like Ruikthar, if Ruikthar feels like going for it, can go turn one Sapphire, turn Root into Ruby, and get Briny Ray out. And then, as long as the Briny Ray can attack this handful of resources, those resources will just be discarded out for other cards. Necropolis Sharpshooter can also do a damage to something key. Give the Geist hand is a little bit on the answery side. We do have an Immortal Tears in hand, so that is a third resource of choice. So that can get the diamond needed for most of these other cards. The blood for Steady the Scales will draw cards, but that's late game. But this also is a hand with not any early plays. Nazak Cursecaster is a 5/6 prismatic. Troops give it flight. Do have an untimely end on 4, but if I thought my opponent would be faster than this might not be a hand to keep. Then again, you have a form of fixing, and this hand can definitely be worse.
All right, let's get started. Ruikthar looking to force a game number three. Give up the Geist, looking to make it to the finals right now and try to close this out. Let's see what happens as we get into standard resource for Ruikthar with that root, going for the Ruby, not wasting any time. Give up the Geist, Sapphire, Immortal Tears. Back to Ruikthar, finds a Merry Elephant off the top. Here comes Briny Ray, turn two. Swing, will find a resource and discard a resource. Mortal Tears for Give Up the Geist, going for that blood threshold. Back over to Ruikthar. We'll find a little Apocalypse there. We'll swing, discard Oracle Song to help fill the hand. Give up the Geist at 21 at the start of the turn. We'll play out a Blood Shard. Excruciator for a little threshold fixing as well. Back over to Ruikthar, finds a Munara Sensei off the top. Champion Power for the Grapes of Wrath. We see Merry Elephant come down, trigger the Rowdy, swing, Sharpshooter goes in the crypt. We'll take a resource, back over to Give Up the Geist, and back over to Ruikthar.
Ruiktar's building up this board, and Give the Geist really can only use Protection Racket or use up the forecast Untimely End to destroy an attacking troop.
After the Bruising Battler, we see a swing here with the Briny Ray, the Grapes of Wrath, and the Merry Elephant. Untimely End will take care of the Elephant. So 2-3 Grapes and a 2-1 Briny Ray swinging in. Give Up the Guy, since he does have a Sapphire Threshold, is forced to discard a card. First caster will go in the crypt and will take that hit and fall to 15. And turn passes over to Give Up the Geist.
Few options this turn. Could have used the Shatter to remove the Bruising Battler, but can use that Killblade of the Milky Eye instead.
So we have a Handmaiden here for Give Up the Geist. We see that Apocalypse with Battle. Going to go ahead and take care of that Flight Troop. So removing the blocker for the Briny Ray, Give Up the Geist will fall to 13. But does have answers in hand. Soul Shatter, Engulf, and Protection Racket. Steady the Scales, though, for Give Up the Geist as we go back over to Ruikthar. Finds a Treacherous Search off the top. Protection Racket to keep the Killblade alive, but a swing in the air will swing in and Give Up the Geist will fall to 11, but gain 1 to Steady the Scales.
This Briny Ray has done quite a bit, helping Ruikthar set up for the near future. A big board followed by Terrible Temper. But Ruikthar isn't quite there yet. Health is something to look at, and Give the Geist really just has one card remaining. But that Steady the Scales will balance out that health at 12 and give Geist some additional cards.
Soul Shatter taking care of the Briny Ray to stop the bleeding in the air. Here comes a full swing. We do see blocks there to remove those two threats. We'll take 3, fall to 12. Full swing from Ruchthar, from Give Up the Guys will take Ruchthar down to 15. And here comes a Buzz Killer at the end of Give Up the Guy's turn. Spam bot off the top for Ruchthar.
A race for Ruikthar, as Gibbet the Geist doesn't actually have that much attack in troops right now. The trump card in Terrible Temper and could crush damage through if Gibbet the Geist attacks with too much.
Briny Toad into Spam Bot as Give Up the Guys will ready and play the resource in hand. Back to Ruikthar, found a resource, which means Terrible Temper is available this turn as well. And indeed, Terrible Temper is played. 6-7 crush, 5-3 crush, 4-3 crush for Ruikthar. Briny Toad going to discard to get flight, and here comes that swing.
Alone, that is 5 damage, 4 if blocked by the Phantom. Violet's Handmaiden can bring another Phantom, but the Briny Toad having Crush itself makes that block not as favorable.
And we do see the blocks here. Double block to take out the Spam Bot. Gonna chump block. And that, the math is no good. Ruikthar will take game number 2 and force a final matchup here between both of these players.
Troops had Crush, but not very much defense on all of these troops. If the blocks were made to survive this, it was still going to be hard pressed for Give the Guys to come back in the next turn. Next game.
We saw Terrible Temper do work in multiple games now here for Ruikthar. Being able to give all your troops some added attack and defense and crush is so important here. And we'll see if that plays into account here in game number 3. Let's go and take a look at opening hands here for both players. As we get into it, Give Up the Guys on the bottom with 4 resources. Good mix here, along with that Excruciator for the thresholds. Sitting Scales and a little Vertimus action there for Give Up the Geist. Over for Ruikthar, we see Ruby and Wild Shard. Briny Ray, Treacherous Search, Minoru Sensei, and Oracle Song. And is that Terrible Temper in hand? It looks like it is for Ruikthar. Hacky, what are your thoughts on these hands?
All right, Give the Guys can curve out the Hextricator into Venomous Piper. He's got the threshold. The Verminous Piper creates 2 Chaos Tongues, 1/1 unblockables, and puts them into hand. And those are just damage threats. They Chaos Tongues do their thing, and it's a decent 2/3 size itself. So Give the Guys could be okay with this. Rukthar's got a riskier hand, but not so much more risky. And a Munaru Sensei, that means an extra card drawn and makes it safer. A Sapphire would make this hand great with Briny Ray and Oracle Song, but can also draw into additional cards that can be played. Still risky, but I think Rickthar is going to tend to keep this one.
All right, let's get started here. An important match here between these players trying to make the finals. Both players at least with $500, but the point here is they want to make it into the finals. As we see standard resource plays going on for turn 2. Turn 2, Ruikthar Minoru Sensei will draw back over to Give Up the Geist. Sapphire Shard now with triple thresholds. We'll play the Excruciator, going to go for that second Sapphire threshold. Ruikthar now with the Ruby. Here comes that Simeon Sycamore. Done a lot of work in gaining health and extending these games as we go back to Give Up the Geist. Finds an Echo Horn off the top.
The guy's probably deciding here whether to play the Echo Horn or whether to play something else.
Echo Horn is the play as the turn passes back over to Ruikthar. Sapphire Shard, champion power into Briny Ray. Swing here, and here goes the discard train. Going to go ahead and keep swinging in the air. Give Up the Geist will activate champion power after drawing that Shenanigator. Steadying the Scales is the play as Give Up the Geist passes over to Ruikthar.
Steady Scales is a bit risky, as that will force Give the Guys to draw a card and lose 2 health at the start of each turn, up until Give the Guys is at below 12 health.
A little sucker punch action here to take out the Excruciator. Swing here will give up the guys down to 16, taking 2 points of damage thanks to steady the scales to 14 to draw that extra card.
The thing is, though, that Briny Ray is flight, and Give It the Geist has no way to deal with that flight Briny Ray right now.
Curse Caster for give up the Geist back over to Ruikthar. Ruikthar at 26 health. Give up the Geist at 14. We'll see Oracle Song to draw some more cards. Resource comes out. Swing, discard. Buzzkiller goes in the crypt. Briny Toad, so another opportunity to swing in the air. And give up the Geist now. Drawing some cards. Falls to 10 thanks to Steady and Scales, but does draw some flight answers.
Does draw a Blightbark Courier, but it might be too late. Rookthar's resources and threshold and terrible temper means Briny Ray and Briny Toad are coming in with flight. And Give Up the Geist is only at 10. There is that big Nazik Cursecaster, but everything else in play.
Give up the
Deal.
Geist. Give up the Geist with no open resources. Ruikthar with terrible temper in hand decides to go with Painstroke Sister discard. That's going to take care of the Echo Horn. We'll play out a resource. And Spambot comes down, no swing. Turn back to give up the Geist, finds an untimely end off the top. Mortal Tears going to go and sacrifice for a Sapphire Threshold. We'll play that out.
Yeah, as a Cursecaster currently Give It the Geist's only big troop. So it looks like playing blockers is going to be the play for Give It the Geist to try to withstand this, but
Decides to play the 2 Chaos Tongues to keep up untimely end as we go over to Ruikthar. 15 health separating both these players. Nope, check that. 19 health separating both players after that play. Discard, Roots, getting rid of that Chaos Tongue. Resource, Ruikthar just trying to make as many troops as possible, make Terrible Temper a thing. Crashers is going to come in, or Cursecaster is going to come in, Shenanigator, and that Gobbler. And we may see that Terrible Temper here.
Cursecaster out of commission. It is exhausted this turn, and Give It the Geist only at 12 health. 9 troops in play. That is now a lot of attack.
Definitely going on the greed train here for Ruikthar. Wanted to get as much value out of that Terrible Temper. Showdown's going to get rid of that Gobbler, and a full swing here is going to be a ton of damage. All troops have Crush, so that means no open resources. Full swing for Ruikthar. Finds a Voltaic Blast thanks to that Briny Ray. Painstrokes that, and that's going to do it. Ruikthar, off the back of Terrible Temper and just a touch of greed, will take down that matchup there between Give Up the Geist.
Most of Give It the Geist troops not able to stand up with anything with +2/+2 and Crush, and not dealing enough damage. And honestly, the health gain by the Sycamore Thar, the health buffer to be as greedy as he was. There was no threat. Built up that board and made sure that the terrible temper hit as many troops as possible.
So that means that Ruikthar, or excuse me, Eaglov and Give Up the Geist will be walking away with $500 each. And not too bad considering that Eaglov was a walk-on due to the fact that Esoterra wasn't able to make it today. So as a result of being here and playing in the tournament, Eaglov is now $500 richer as because of that. So congratulations to both those players, Eaglov and Give Up the Geist, as they will walk away with $500. And we're getting ready to bring you the final matchup between Enema and Ruikthar. And it's really some exciting matchups here. Limited is so interesting, Hacky. I mean, just because they are in the same pod, they're all drafting against each other, and the decisions they make could being the difference between being in 8th place or being in 1st place. So let's take a look at opening hands here. Ruikthar on the bottom, looking like with a Sapphire and a Root, Voltaic Blast, Treacherous Search, Savage Showdown, Buzzkiller, and Necropolis Sharpshooter. Over for Enema, we see a good mix of resources here. Ruby, Diamond, and Sapphire. Blinding Light in hand. Briny Ray, little goat action. Hacky, what do you think about these hands?
two decks with that have troops that go into the later game. I've made it into the finals. Ruikthar starts is a bit on the slow side. Needs an extra shard to be able to play Necropolis Sharpshooter, but has Treacherous Search to grab an extra card if needed. So I think Ruikthar keeps this. Attempts to wait a turn or two to see if the route, what the route needs to be, get the Treacherous Search in if needed. But I think Ruikthar can keep that. Enema, on the other hand, there's not only Briny Ray, but also the turn 2 and Cataclysm is possible. A 2/2 that buffs your troops in hand with +1/+1 and flight randomly when it hits an opposing champion. Rookthar can answer that, but needs one resource in order to be able to do so. Savage Showdown in Rooktar's end also able to. I think both players keep. Rookthar does have an option to mulligan if he feels this isn't safe enough. It could be okay.
All right, let's get into the matchup here. Ruikthar and Enema in the finals. Let's get this thing going. Sapphire Shard, turn 1 into a root for that Ruby for Ruikthar. And we'll see that Ruby threshold for Enema. Turn passes back over to Ruikthar. Ruby into Treacherous Search. Going to go ahead and try to find something here from the top 2 cards of the deck. Goes for that Sapphire threshold. Back over to Enema Diamond Shard and Soaring Cataclysm. Or Soaring Catalyst, excuse me, for Enema.
Be answered now.
And Voltaic Blast will take care of that. Needs to take care of that quickly.
Rookthar waits, answers are possible, and we actually see an enemy's hand already has Blinding Light to save it.
Buzzkill coming down for Ruikthar. Back to Enema Ruby Shard. Here comes the Goat. Going to swing here for 4. Well, that Rage Dam doing some work. Ruikthar now at 18.
The Glimmer Goat also makes that Briny Ray huge, but Ruikthar, those false confessions doing work in the previous match. Will it get its hit here? But Ruikthar is going to trade this loss in tempo for another 5 damage from this Resonant and Radicrux with Rage.
Sapphire for Enema. Now at 5 resources. Activation of Champion Power to draw a card.
Enema also holds Blinding Light and can make this trade between Glimmer Goat and Buzzkiller favorable. Ready to interrupt whatever troop Enema may have in mind. Funny enough, it looks like Enema used the charge power last turn
Get the Soaring
Cataclysm back.
And got it back off the draw. Yeah, that was a pretty good hit there.
All prismatic cards from your crypt back into your deck and somewhere.
Just happened to be at the top of the deck. Pretty good. All right, swing with that. Eradicrux, 5 damage to Ruikthar. Ruikthar falling to 13. Huge hit there, and Enema has answers in hand for any damage that may come through. And we'll see that the Sword Catalyst going back into the crypt thanks to False Confession, taking 3. Enema falls to 22. We'll see Spellbobber Gobblers, and that'll end the turn. Ruikthar finding Simeon Sycamore. That did some work in giving Ruikthar a little health advantage, and might do so here in this match. Nope. That's it. Ruikthar says no thank you. Enema will take game number 1 there off the quick aggression from Enema.
Enema having just overwhelming flight there, and Ruikthar missing the wild here in the game, but not being able to use the Savage Showdown to take out the Resonant Eradicrux was a killer. And even being able to answer a lot of Enema's cards, a lot of Enema's flight threats. The Briny Ray didn't even need to be ever hit play, and it was a 5/4 flight speed.
All right.
Jill can come back, and now we are in game 2.
Here we go for Ruikthar. We see a couple resources followed by 2 roots. Glaciates, a little Toplies, and Merry Elephant. For Enema, we see the red, white, and blue resources there on the left. A little goat action, Cloud Speak, Resonant. Hacky, what do you think about these opening hands here for both players?
Both players have their thresholds. Rooktar's a little bit on the slower side, but has Glaciate in hand to delay a early troop threat. Ice block, and that reverts the card too. So any card that is modified by something, maybe by Glimmergoat, even later in the game, Glaciate can answer. But Rooktar is on 4, Merry Elephant, 5 Topiary Sculptor, but quite nice troops when we get there. The Merry Elephant and the Topiary Sculptors, Feral and Rebirth will provide something for Enema to answer. But Enema's curve starts at 3 also. Erraticrux, the Glimmergoat, and honestly, we have Evasion as well in the Cloud Peak Hermit and the resident Radicrix. Really good stuff on both sides. Star is on the play.
Ruakthar looking to force a game number 3. Will he be able to do it, or will Enema take down the tournament? $1,000 here on the line between both players. First place gets 2,000. Second place gets 1,000. So both players walking away with at least $1,000, but that's probably not good enough for these players. They want to be the champion, get those sleeves, and win that $2,000 cash prize as we get into standard resources here for both players. Turn 1 and going into turn number 2.
Title is on the line. The sweet sleeve.
See a route for the Ruby Shard for Ruakthar. Back over to Enema. Ruby Shard. Turn passes. Necropolis Sharpshooter off the top for Ruakthar. Just plays that out. Do 1 damage to Enema. And there is that Erraticrux for Enema. Hoping to capitalize as they did last game. Wild Shard into Grapes of Wrath for Ruakthar. Sharpshooter swings in. Enema will take that fall to 22. Health totals equal. Merry Elephant for Ruakthar will end the turn. Back over to Enema, we'll see Glimmergoat. We'll see the swing and the block. So a trade there between the Elephant and the Erraticrux. As we go back to Ruakthar, finds a Briny Ray off the top. And a little battling of the ghost swing here for 4. Enema down to 18, so big hit there. Activation of Champion Power. Draws a card.
Doesn't have flight right now. Needs a prismatic troop in play.
Survivor for Enema. Start of the turn for Ruakthar finds Terrible Temper. We've seen that card do work for Ruakthar throughout the top 8 here to secure some victories. Sculptor comes out. Grapes of Wrath will trigger the Rowdy. Go to a 3/4. We'll see the route play out and turn passes back over to Enema. Draw. We see Lost in the City in hand. Part of that draw.
Be looking for the best chance to use Terrible Temper when Enema's guards down. Ruakthar still has a Glaciate. There's a super buffed. And the Cloud Peak Hermit is on both sides as well.
No play as Enema will pass the turn. Ruakthar has to think there's something up here. We'll see Glaciate there onto the Survivor.
Getting out of the ice block is a basic action, so those resources can't be spent on the Heartsworn Survivor. It is going to have to be something else used up here.
Glaciate is allowed to hit Briny Ray here, and we're going to see a full swing here from Ruakthar. Whipcrack, though, going to go ahead and take care of that Briny Ray before combat. We're not going to be gaining the advantage of the Briny Ray being able to discard and draw a card. Discards a Diamond Shard. Here comes the swing. Blinding Light's going to stop that damage. Enema safe for one turn. Back over to Enema.
Hold up more resources for this Lost in the City. Could end up playing the Cloud Peak Hermit and get that troop back from the ice block. But Ruikthar is hoping resources are spent to open up the way for this terrible temper. Anima has not seen the terrible temper so far this match.
Decision point here for Enema. Resource, now it's 6. Decides to go with the Hermit. Give itself flight. And back over to Ruikthar, we see Painstroke Sister.
Play the Painstroke Sister and try to terrible transfer next turn, or use this opportunity now and make those troops big. Topiary Sculptor and Grapes of Wrath are big enough to trade with Cloud Peak Hermit. Necropolis Sharpshooter isn't yet.
And decides to go Painstroke Sister swing. Enema down to 14. Ruikthar down to 20, or Ruikthar at 21. Ruikthar looking to go wide and go big here, holding that terrible temper. And we see a couple troops here for Enema to try to close the gap here. And we'll see activation of champion power for the Grapes and Terrible Temper. Big swing coming in against Enema. All of its crush. 21 damage.
Enema might be regretting discarding that Lost in the City right now. This crush damage was coming, playing 2 blockers, hoping to get some value through backswing for lethal. And now all of these troops are large with crush, and there is not too much damage left. Enema probably will not die to this attack, but will be left in a much worse position.
And again, those troops all have crush, will continue to have crush. And a 21-point swing here for Enema, against Enema. And Ruikthar again with the terrible temper doing work against his opponent, forces a game number 3, a critical win for Ruikthar as he is attempting to be the next CCS champion. And we are getting ready to load up game number 3 between both these players. Very exciting swing there. Terrible temper. Again, just proving why it's been so strong for Ruikthar and getting him here to the finals.
Him of Suffering discard was actually random, so that wasn't the choice. But with risk comes reward with cards like Sanctum of Suffering.
All right, here we go. So the finals match in game number 3, $1,000 on the line, as well as the Cosmic Crown Showdown champion and the sleeves, as Enema will face off against Ruikthar here. Very important match. Enema here with double Diamond Shard and no other resources here. False Confessions, Voltaic Blast, a little Cloud Speak, Drifting, and a Ruinant. And for Ruikthar, we see double Wild, a man, it's just escaped me now. Merry Elephant, Painstroke Sister, Briny Ray, and False Confessions. Hacky, what do you think about these opening hands? I don't think Enema can keep this hand, can he?
Depends. Does Enema trust in that deck? But on you are correct. On the play with only 2 resources, with the keys to this deck in other shards, if Enema keeps this, Enema needs to draw one of those 2 thresholds in the top 2 cards. the other two thresholds makes Drifting Ruinant and Scouring Ruinant both possible and both excellent plays. So there is a chance Enema stakes that tournament life on the line that one of the two cards is there. False Confession will take Blast, both answers. Rookthar doesn't have a perfect hand either, though. Is missing Sapphire, Briny Ray not possible unless that's there. There is a Ruby with the Root of Savagery, but if not that Briny Ray, not very much to do early. So Enema, Rookthar could be comfortable keeping this, especially with the extra card to draw. It really is. Does Enema stake the tournament life on this final game in this hand?
Let's find out. Decides to mulligan. Finds a Sapphire Shard, Root, Lost in the City, Cloudspeak, Drifting, Ruinant, and Soaring Catalyst. Hacky. It says, I mean, you got to probably keep this hand and hope that Kismet gives you some stuff you need.
Two of the three, I would still be happy with this hand, though still needing to draw into that diamond to make both of those possible.
And a mulligan for Ruikthar as well. Here we go. Resource play standard for turn one for both players.
So both players on even ground. Rookthar does have a second Sapphire to make the Dreamsmoke Diva possible. And Enema has a third resource, so at least can continue on.
Diamond Shard off the top. Critical hit here for Enema. Makes both the Drifting and Soaring Cataclysm available.
Soaring Cataclysm early will probably trade off with the Dreamsmoke Diva or meet with that Glaciate. But definitely a good pickup for Enema.
Cataclysm is the play for Enema. Back over to Ruikthar.
Rookthar glaciates here. The Soaring Cataclysm, if it starts hitting, gives troops without flight in hand flight, and flight is super powerful in this set. It is either that or risk trying to block with Dreamsmoke Diva, but Dreamsmoke Diva, great in other parts as well.
Oracle Song for some card draw. Back to Enema. We see the Ruinant come out. Cataclysm gonna swing. Give +1/+1 in flight to the only troop in, or to the Ruinant. Grapes of Wrath for Ruikthar. So able to do some rowdy stuff here.
Oracle Song was probably the greediest play of the options I looked in the hand. It may pay off, but in the meantime, these Ruinants are going to attempt to ruin Ruikthar's run at this grand prize.
We see Lost in the City here, putting both those troops back in. Big swing. Ruikthar down to 10.
His tempo is overwhelming. Ruikthar has all of the cards. Asked for it with that Oracle Song. Light threats. Appreciate to handle the Drifting Ruinant and revert that off. Can play Dreamsmoke Diva. And Cataclysm. Still has to take a bit of damage, but then we have the Cloud Peak Hermit out here.
Merry Elephant coming down. Savage Showdown taking care of that Soaring Cataclysm. Evaporate off the top here for Enema.
The tempo does not stop. Enema's pickup of that Evaporate is going to bring Rookthar down to 2.
Glimmer Goat into Evaporate. Swing for 8. Ruikthar down to 2. And Enema's about to close this out.
One turn spent Oracle songing on the draw. This still might have been a hard one. Enema has picked up some great cards.
Miss
Tempo.
Missing out on that second ruby for Fiery End is the thing of note. That would have been two damage or three damage to two separate troops, which could have helped stop some of this bleeding coming from Enema to Ruichthar. I mean, this damage was just continually just pounding at Ruichthar, and Ruichthar sitting here at 2 health, 5 open resources, card full of hands, but not a lot here to stop this onslaught for Enema.
Gigantic 8/6 Cloud Peak Hermit waits Ruichthar if Ruichthar has an answer to this. Fiery End is a double ruby card. There's some powerful double ruby cards here. Running Fiery End, running Temperable Temper, but they come at a cost. In a Tristar deck, you need those thresholds to make those powerful cards active.
Wow, and that will do it. Enema off the aggression. We'll take that down. Let's go ahead and take a look at the final standings here. And Enema taking down the Cosmic Crown Showdown, winning $2,000 and the Animated Cosmic Crown Showdown sleeves. And Ruichthar walking away with $1,000, but still a good prize to be had for sure. And so congratulations to Ruichthar, and a special form of congratulations to Enema, our first Cosmic Crown, or our next Cosmic Crown Showdown champion. The first time making the top 8, as well as taking down the tournament. So congratulations to Enema for that.
Solid, scary deck, taking out a bunch of strong fellow drafters in this draft pod, puts the capstone on today's Cosmic Crown Showdown.
And yeah, I think Hacky, over the past couple days, we saw some interesting things, especially with the introduction of Doombringer into the meta. We saw some really exciting decks, some interesting stuff, and different tech that people are bringing, and a good showing overall for the health of Hex. And today's matchups were great. Seeing Ruichthar just trample with that terrible temper, making his way to the finals, and ultimately, unfortunately, falling to Enema, who was able to take that down off a strong, aggressive showing in game number 3. What are your thoughts on the day, Hacky?
There's a lot of drafting going on and a lot of subtle effects from the players drafting in a pod. We saw Wild and Ruby not Wild and Ruby cards being split among 3-4 decks here. Ruichthar also heavily in Ruby and Wild. And well, Enema, and we saw Flight doing really well, Rebirth doing really well. If you're wondering how to draft this format, play limited, look at the decks that did well today. You're going to find things there. But solid players making it through, drafting well, and playing as best as they can.
And if you are interested in competing in the Cosmic Crown Showdown, remember, this is a tournament that happens every 2 months. That means you guys have July will be the next Cosmic Crown Showdown, so you guys have some time to climb the Cosmic Ladder and make the top 64 in both limited and constructed to be able to compete in the next tournament. Some great prizes and stuff to be had. Hacky, it's been great casting with you here for the tournament, and I look forward to the next one.
We'll see you next time, Snake. We've got lots of constructed and limited info to pour through. You can find it on Hex PvP tools, and I'm sure you're going to see it on the ladder and in Hex bashes. Looking forward to seeing how we develop.
All right, guys, on behalf of Hacky, myself, and Hex Entertainment, thank you guys for watching the Cosmic Crown Showdown. We'll catch you guys in July. Take care.